secure location.
Do what?
How did you do it again?
Did you
Really? I did on the thing.
Are we good?
I don't know yet.
This is comedy gold.
Are we live?
Hell, I don't know
course we're
anymore. Hey, we all now have sound. We have
We're
sound.
live. We're live. Yeah, I just
Take 27.
take 27.
Okay.
Hey guys, this is great, and this is why everybody loves Fanboys918 because whoa, here we go. Everybody loves Fanboys918 because we are not above lifting up our skirt and showing that we have nothing underneath. So anyway, Decoy here, and I'm here with the rest of the Fanboys918 core group coming to you live from the Fanboys918 studio. First, securely atop our top secret location in Jinx, America, and we're here with a very special episode of Real Love. Special? Why is it special? Well, one, because we got everybody together, and as you can tell, we haven't done this in a while from the technical issues that we're having. But today, we're also going to be curating our favorite films from one of America's master journeyman directors, and that would be Richard Donner, who passed away about a week ago at his home in Hollywood. When news of this came down, I think a lot of us were sad. We weren't heartbroken. I mean, he lived a very long, vigorous life. I mean, he was prepping another film to shoot at the time that he died. But we're sad because he directed a lot of the movies that are so important to us and in our lives. And when we decided to do this episode, you know, we started digging into his filmography, and we kept unearthing all these cinematic gems that were such an important part of our lives growing up, you know, as kids and even into adulthood. So, you know, I'm going to make the case that he was the silent genius who helped us shape our love of cinema. I mean, I know that sounds a bit grandiose. I mean, everybody knows who George Lucas is. Everybody knows who Steven Spielberg is. But there's a lot of films that Richard Donner had his fingers in that people don't know. And I think as you listen to us, as the films that we talk about unfold, it's an easy case to make. Richard Donner was born in 1930. He actually wanted to be an actor, but he was cast in a small part of a television episode that was being directed by Martin Rift. And for our cinephiles out there, that was the same Martin Rift who directed movies like The Long Hot Summer, Murphy's Romance, Black Orchid. And Rift, after working with him for a couple of days, took him aside and was like, "Look, dude, you can't take direction. You know, you may have you understand the act of the craft of acting, but you can't take direction. So you know what? You just might as well become a director." And so on that sort of impetus, he decided to do that. And Martin Ritt, putting his money where his mouth was, he hired Donner as his assistant, and the rest was, well, television and cinematic history. Donner began his directing career on staff at Desilu. Now, for those of you that are great curators of cinema and television, you know that word. Desilu was the studio, of course, that was owned by Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, and he started off directing commercials and many shows. He ended up directing many shows from the golden age of television, like The Rifleman, Wanted Dead or Alive, which is the old Steve McQueen show, The Fugitive. He directed Get Smart. He directed episodes from The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Wild Wild West, Gilligan's Island, for God's sake. And notably, he directed a show called Have Gun, Will Travel, whose two main writers were a gentleman named Bruce Geller, who would would go on to create the show Mission Impossible. And the other main writer of that show was a man named Gene Roddenberry, who would go on to later create a little show called Star Trek. So I'm sure that many of you are aware of that. But now I say all this, and the reason I've kind of unfolded all this is to kind of lay the groundwork for our discussion. Richard Donner, as a director in this era, he was on a Western one week, he was on a comedy the next week, and and then an action adventure show the week after that. He was a working journeyman director. He was like, if I don't work, I don't get paid. So he's just moving from show to show, figuring out what makes those shows work, prepping, going, and just dropping into that show's formula and directing an episode, moving on. I would put forth the thesis that we're going to talk about later, that maybe that gave him the ability to operate in any genre, and I think it blessed us as fans in the long run for it. Now, the irony in the last point that I brought up was that Donner never directed an episode of Mission Impossible or Star Trek. I mean, he missed out on crafting a segment of two of the most iconic franchises of that era, and that went on to spawn franchises that continue into this day, but he never got to put his stamp on them. However, he did take a swing at several episodes of, another program that would go on to become legendary, and that was The Twilight Zone. He would direct multiple episodes of that series, but the one I've chosen to start our retrospective on his career with is probably the one that's considered the most successful of his installments, and probably one of the most iconic. We're going to be using the word iconic a lot in this discussion. The most iconic of any episode of that show ever produced. That's right, 918ers. I'm speaking of nothing less than Twilight Zone Season 5, Episode 3, 1963's Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. It's an episode about a man who is recovering from a mental breakdown, who travels back home with his wife, only to discover that his flight path takes him directly for the Twilight Zone. That's right. Thank you there. Perfect.
At least I got something right today.
No, that's right. That's right.
It's very low tech.
Very low
That's
tech.
right.
No techie.
No, that's fine. Because with all the issues we've had getting on the air, that's perfect. It was and still is considered a triumph for that series. I mean, you've got William Shatner in one of his earliest pre-Captain Kirk era roles, giving a tour de force performance under Donner's direction. I mean, all right, let's just stop here. It has all the Shat's trademarks. Sans one thing that the Queen is very nervous about, which is the moose knuckle. But he's
They can't serve him any martini shots.
yeah. I mean, but has all of Shatner's trademarks that he's known for. He's charming, he's vulnerable, he's commanding, and he's manic. All over the course of 25 minutes under Donner's direction, and these things he managed to play to Shatner's strengths, but was able to keep his tendency to go too big in check. I mean, let's all be honest here. We all love William Shatner. We all love Captain Kirk. But we all know that without proper direction, Shatner can go a bit too big, right? And moose knuckle notwithstanding. But they kept that in check. And, you couple that with Donner's masterful shot framing and his ability to coordinate live in-camera effects. I mean, you watch this show and you've got Shatner's character ranting about seeing a man on the wing of the plane, and outside you've got thunder and lightning and rain, and all this stuff was done in camera because it's 1963. I mean, you can't. There's no digital effects, going on with this. It was all done, in camera live. So you've got the set of the plane with Shatner sitting here. Through the window, you've got the wing and the rain and the gremlin and all these types of things. These are all things that Richard Donner had to coordinate and get them all timed out to work perfectly, and he did. And the show and this episode is taut. I mean, the episode moves. It's got a fast pace. It's universally considered one of the show's best installments that I can't recommend highly enough. If you are a fan, if you consider yourself a fan of suspense, horror, just cinema in general, you must put this on your list. I mean, I will caution my younger fans out there. All the classic Twilight Zone episodes are in black and white. So if you struggle with watching that sort of film noir type thing, just kind of get yourself mentally in that place to kind of figure it out. But before you turn it on, but it will be well worth it. It was actually William Shatner's second Twilight Zone after 1960's Nick of Time. And actually, when Richard Donner passed away, he tweeted out that his sadness and he was upset that Donner passed away. But he also shared some things that I wasn't aware of, that in order to keep the show's budget down, like I said, this was a 5th season Twilight Zone episode. The show was in its waning days. They knew the writing was on the wall. This is probably their last year. In an effort to keep the budget down, the studio cut shooting days out. So he had to shoot this entire episode in 3 days, and he did it, and it was amazing. In spite of this, in spite of the hurdles with the budget and everything else, Donner crafts a masterpiece of a man struggling to keep hold of his sanity against the backdrop of a terrifying gremlin that's out on the wing of the plane. I mean, it's been lampooned on Family Guy. It's been lampooned I mean, how many times has this show been made fun of? You know.
It was done on Warner Brothers with Looney Tunes. Actually.
Yeah. I mean, this episode is iconic. I mean, here's a man on the wing of this plane, you know. And again, actually, one of my favorite things was it Third Rock from the Sun, where John Lithgow is on that.
Oh yeah.
And William Shatner played Big Giant Head. Well, there's an episode where they're both traveling on a plane.
Yeah.
And they were like, I think I saw someone in the wing of that plane. And John Lithgow says, the same thing happened to me. You know, because he played William Shatner's part in the Twilight Zone movie. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, what a great, I mean, the Simpsons did it, Nightmare at 5.5 Feet.
Yeah.
I mean, there was somebody on the side of the school bus hanging out. I mean, it was fantastic. So, you know, I mean, this just to lay the ground of how brilliant and how well regarded this episode is.
Yep.
So, apart from the technical brilliance of the episode, I think it's endured to become Twilight Zone's calling card. It also, you know, it's an allegory of everyone's fear of flying. It's an allegory for those of us that are forced to remain passive when we, you know, are in an area where we don't have any control. Speaking of someone who occasionally has control issues.
Imagine that.
That would be, you know.
Oh yes.
Anyone else? Yeah, that would be me. So, but there's times where you're out of control, and I think the whole episode, you know, does very well and goes around. Anybody else have any thoughts about Twilight? I mean, you mentioned a Family Guy. Anyone else have any thoughts about Nightmare at 20,000 Feet?
So, I was going to say. So I remember this episode. It was probably one of the very first Twilight Zone shows I ever saw of that series, and I just remember how impactful it was. In fact, I don't think I had even seen William Shatner in any Star Trek or anything like before this. I was actually a Twilight Zone fan before I was a Star Trek fan. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, I loved going home and seeing the reruns of the Twilight Zone and in the afternoon. So I had a lot of great memories with it, and this was one of my all-time favorites. This episode, and you know, William Shatner to me was selling it so great. I didn't realize what his range was, but you know, his delivery and everything was just so impactful, and it was just to me, it was just a great episode that really, it was another hook that got me into the Twilight Zone.
Well, fantastic. And then, Goldar, do you watch the old Twilight Zone? Have you seen the old episodes?
Well, I actually watched, just like I was mentioning, I watched the Looney Tunes version of it before I had watched the Twilight Zone version. So I saw it and I thought it was kind of funny and it was a joke.
Yeah.
And then I went back and watched the original one because I was a big fan of the Outer Limits. But the Outer Limits was also kind of a take on the Twilight Zone or something that came after that.
Right.
So when I watched the original Twilight Zone episode, I was like, oh, that's William Shatner. Wow, he's from Star Trek.
Yeah.
Having watched that, it was a fantastic episode. It definitely, just like IT Geek was saying, it definitely demonstrated the range that William Shatner had for his performance. And then also, just like you were mentioning earlier, it definitely touched on the fear of flying that a lot of people have, and that, you know, things that can mysteriously go wrong. You know, we sometimes blame on gremlins that got into the machines. So,
much like our broadcast.
All the time, every time.
Tonight's was not gremlins. That was just either four-legged furry friends or basically IT Geek being non-IT.
But
Sunday,
yeah,
you're expecting to be
Sunday,
today.
Yeah.
I IT'd yesterday, so you know it's a little hard to keep that up.
Reverend.
Reverend.
But yeah, it was a fantastic episode. It's the one that I think of every time I think of the Twilight Zone.
Okay. Well, and I think that it's.
I mean, we got other groups with us. So,
Yeah.
I mean, so that's probably one thing we forgot to do due to my technologies. We didn't introduce our group.
We did not introduce our group. We have the entire core fanboy, well, with a couple of exceptions.
Yes.
Fanboys918 core group with us. Do we want to switch to Fangirls, or do we want to go to the Blues Band and the Wonder Midget first? Let's go.
All right.
They're both pointing at each other.
So guess what? We're gonna go to the Fangirls first.
Right. So
because they're looking so lovely. So
We have a four-legged furry toddler trying to get in the picture. So
Yes.
we're trying to not unplug things.
all right. Well, we're gonna still go live. So we're gonna bring it over here to you guys.
So now, do you have any knowledge of this show of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet? Or
Yes.
I know you. Well, you do. 'Cause you don't have any choice. Turtle Gal doesn't have a choice.
I didn't have any choice. I'm married to Geek Boy. So yeah, it does. I think it relates to the fear of flying and the fear of and we got to remember he was coming out of a mental institute. So he is thinking, was I cured? My wife has come and picked me up and we are going back home, and yes, I've been in this mental institute, but now I'm seeing this gremlin on the side of the plane, and I'm like, she's like, he's thinking in his mind, holy crap, am I really seeing this, or is this my mental breakdown once again coming out?
Yeah.
And I do like Shatner's performance of this because, he can go way over the top with a lot of things.
Not Will.
But he doesn't in this. And I true, that's Donner.
Right.
Hey, Bill, bring it down just a notch.
Yeah. Bring it down.
So either one of you have any knowledge of this?
Not at all.
All right. You want to switch back over to...
I was going to say, this one's 30. We never introduced her to...
The only knowledge of Twilight Zone I have is when my little sister got in trouble on the Tower of Terror, because she didn't want to ride it. She got in a lot of trouble. That's
She wanted to ride it.
That was her idea.
That was her idea, but she got there and she decided not to. That is my knowledge of Twilight Zone. So,
All right, so put it this way. If it were not for Twilight Zone, there would be no Black Mirror. There would be no Love, Death, and Robots. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
There would be there's a lot of things that would not exist. I would posit that there would be no American Horror Story.
I agree.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Maybe even Mr. Robot would be
Yeah,
another one.
I would say if it were not for Twilight Zone was an anthology show that had different casts every week. But I would say if it were not for Twilight Zone, there would not be this legacy of shows that have come after it. So we want to see what if the Wonder Midget and Jay the Blues Man have any comments on
You got
Whoa, here you go, ready.
Yeah, we're good. So, I mean, I love Shatner in this. I don't mind the film noir. Being the last love child of the 60s, I grew up with a lot of black and white. But I did like that, like you said, this really highlighted some of his stuff. We'd only seen Shatner in Westerns up to this point on a lot of television. So I'm just wondering if maybe something in a little different genre kind of helped. Also being that they had a lot of stage training.
Yes.
So back then everything was over dramatic, especially if you ever watch any of the soap operas. We make fun of soap operas from other countries, but it's the overacting was just kind of hindering on Bollywood almost. But it was great acting, and like you said, Donner really helped him hone, and then he came into his own later. But I love that all the other, like being with Roddenberry, working with him, and how you can tell he enjoys his work because of all the people that he works with and how he tries to work with them again in whatever he's doing. So that's the one thing I love about Donner. But seeing his early works and, like you said, all the different genres that he hits, this was one of the highlights early in his career before he went to film.
Well, I guarantee you, whenever I was first able to watch it, it blew me away. I didn't realize as a kid that I had a fear of being in a tight, confined space. I really didn't realize until I was later on in life, as a young adult, flying in an airplane, that I don't like being off the ground. And I'm going into the military to be working on aircraft that fly, and that was very scary. This movie just really, like you said before, Geek Boy, that it really touches on the aspects of being in that type of environment, like Turtle Girl said, with having this serious mental illness, that you think that you're well, and you're not supposed to be seeing things on standing outside on an airplane wing.
You're
When
self-gaslighting.
you're at 25,000 feet or above or whatever, and it's raining, and this thing is doing bad things to the aircraft, and this is what you're in. I mean, this is causing harm to your well-being and everybody else's, and it's very, very scary. So I love the way we've all seen Shat in person at different conventions. We know how Shat can be, and he is marvelous.
I'd
And-
love to hear
and
45-minute answer about this movie.
He is funny, and you're right. The way Richard Donner just kind of, you can almost see it, where how he's just helping, keeping him on point, and giving him enough leadway on the
His own talents.
on the green, if you will. Okay, you get on the green, and you have that ability to move and put that ball right there exactly where you need to. But if you get out of that and you get off of that nice, beautiful green, it gets to be a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
Donner had that way of being able to work with not just Shat, but so many different people.
So many different talents.
Absolutely, across the board. And to see how perfect he was a fit for being a classical director like he has become, a journeyman director.
Yes.
Loved it. It's
and-
one of my favorite ones. You can't mention Twilight Zone TV series without someone bringing up the fact that,
That's one of the top 3.
yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And I want to jump in here just real quick. I don't think I could have said it any better, but you know, I've said journeyman director a couple of times. The Blues Man brought it up. Journeyman director has kind of a negative connotation to it, like someone who basically they bring in to keep the trains running on time and keep it under budget. That is not what Donner was. I mean, he's a journeyman.
Did that.
Right, he did do that, yes. But he was a journeyman director in the respect that he kept things on budget and on time. But he was not a Quentin Tarantino. He didn't wake up one day and go, oh man, I want to write a script about this. Or he wasn't a James Cameron who, I'm going to get this technology created so I can make this movie. You know, he wasn't a George Lucas or a Steven Spielberg, but he made great populist films that resonate today. I would say probably the closest thing we have in the working cinema today maybe be Ron Howard. You know, someone who always makes good quality films or tries to. We'll talk about it. Ron, you got your solo. Richard Donner's got his timeline. We'll talk about that later. But they, but for whatever reason, they did their best to make the best movie they could. And the idea of a journeyman director is kind of poo-pooed in the idea that they don't have a vision or they don't have they're not a singular auteur. Well, but they make great populist films. And I'm going to wrap up this discussion about Nightmare at 20,000 Feet because I think it's important to note that, you know, getting on what I just said about that and how this episode leans heavily into suspense and horror, it would make perfect sense that Richard Donner's big break, his transition from TV to movies, would come in a property that has a lot of suspense and horror elements. And that leads us to our first big deep dive into one of Richard Donner's cinematic movies. And I'm going to pass it over to Jay the Bluesman with his pick, which is 1976's The Omen. Jay?
The Omen, one of my most fondest horror movies ever created. Granted, when this came out in '76, I was only a 5-year-old just causing havoc and terror in my own house.
You had to wait till Cinemax HBO days.
Right. So this movie comes across at the most perfect time this movie could be created. It was very well written by David Seltzer. It has an all-star cast. I mean, who doesn't love Gregory Peck?
Oh,
But
yeah, and he was in his prime at that time.
during the '70s, you got to see the
The blossoming of the horror. That's what you mentioned the other day. The blossoming of the horror genre.
so you have a lot of the idealistics of Americans that were, and not just Americans, everybody, but specifically here in America, where your ideology and your family values and everything else comes to a crashing change, and everything's in flux. That long history of everything being perfect in society, where everything and everybody's just happy and this is wonderful, and now you have war, you have 73, 74 oil crisis, you have everything's thrown in society, American society,
We had economic
in
issues.
turmoil.
We had,
This
yeah.
was a very horrific time for the American society. And then you have a lot of different, trying to figure out a good way to say this, the religious section was changing, where you have
were becoming more secular, but they were exploring a lot of the mythos.
Right. Everything was changing, and all these different ideas, and I think that opportunity created a perfect impact of this movie. Like I said, everything has to be well timed in cinema.
Yeah.
You have this movie comes out with featuring the birth of the Antichrist, that's written loosely in the Bible, that's talked about in the Bible, and in this screenplay, the way it was written originally by Brian, him and Richard kind of had a little bit of an odds of how the interpretation of this movie should be developed. Richard Donner wanted to have it where the audience creates and comes to their own understanding of as far as, is this really the Antichrist? And where Brian was more, this is matter of fact.
Wow.
The movie, it had a pretty limited budget, but not bad. It was wrapped up in 11 weeks. They grossed almost $61 million, which was huge. For 1976, 60 million plus. Wow. And it was also, besides the all-star cast, Jerry Goldsmith has...
oh my God, Jerry Goldsmith's score. Yeah.
His score was just amazing. And just the way he was able to work with the vision that Richard had through this wonderful production of a now absolute cult classic horror movie. It's just phenomenal.
I'll actually say that The Omen, there's two movies that have the most scariest impact on me when I was growing up. The Omen and The Exorcist are the two that I remember hiding behind the chair watching.
Really?
Yes, literally,
Wow.
like peeking around watching it. My stepdad, Benny, at the time, he liked watching these shows, and I literally would hide behind chairs and couches.
Damien, this is all for you.
No.
This is all for you.
That was
No.
pretty horrific. I mean, you got to think about the impact of seeing Damien's nanny jump off of their house and in a noose, and then in front of everybody, parents and photographers and writers and all the children during Damien's birthday party.
And not just that, he
Wow.
was ambassador
Talk
to
about a
Great Britain.
statement.
Well, and when considering the fact he's the ambassador
Yes,
to
his
Great
father was.
Britain,
Yes,
all those children, those were all diplomats and statesmen and probably lords and ladies. So that really could have
right.
damaged him politically. I'm surprised it didn't more so, but I love how it's very Hitchcock and
Mhm.
they
Oh, it is very Hitchcock.
Yeah,
and
I like
exactly
that.
what you were saying.
Thank you for saying that. That leads me to the point that
with the
his
music.
ability to be able to do the different camera angles and the subtlety of the shadow effect, which is again Hitchcock, and having the mirror effect with the lens, and especially with the opening scene where you have Damien's father, and he's sitting there talking.
and the
He's talking
priest.
to the priest, and you can see through the glass of the nun holding the new baby, which is Damien.
Mm-hmm.
And the priest comes up and he's having that conversation of no one has to know, and just the decision that was made right there, and just that shot was just very, very wonderfully put together. The really cool fun fact I dug up, I had no idea until I started doing a little bit of research. The fact that this movie was released in the UK first. It was released on June 6, 1976, 666.
Oh my God.
6676. Yeah.
The perfect timing for this movie, which revolves around the number of the beast, which is a human number.
Yeah.
Just fantastic. Of course, it was later to be released June 25th in the United States. Again, just phenomenal when they're at the different locations, the way the camera shoots, looking down at the car rolling up. Just great.
All right, so I want to comment on a couple of things if I can, and get your take on it, because The Omen, for whatever reason, we've done horror panels before. We've done all kinds of stuff before. The Omen never makes that list. It never makes that list of top 10s or whatnot, but yet it has two iconic death scenes, one of which involves Patrick Troughton, who was the second Doctor, the second actor played Doctor Who. He plays the priest when the pipe comes down, and I mean, Donner said flat out they were out of money, and so they had a piece of piano wire, and they just put that pipe on there and shot it down there, and Patrick Troughton was standing like 3 or 4 feet away, and when it hits down, he tenses up and like he's like Troughton sold it. It was great, and the David Warner beheading with the sheet of glass. Do you guys have any comments or thoughts about that? I mean, this was iconic, and this never makes our list.
Well, yeah, and that's where it's very Hitchcock to me. In, like you were saying, the camera angles where you got reflections. I also like how they, considering there were really no special effects.
Yeah.
You've got to figure out a way to, and the fact they made the body jump when it decapitated the dummy, that was kind of great. I mean, the stuntmen in this movie didn't have a whole lot of heavy duty stuff, but they did fabulous work in whatever they were doing, because you got to time it just right. But special effects like the photography. So when they're showing the photography and he shows, like you said, the pipe coming down, and then each subsequent picture, the next several days, it got to where it was longer and longer. It's like, you've got to figure out a way to make that photographic exposure show that, so you can have it on the films. We didn't have digital or CGI or anything
Oh
like
God,
that.
we were so far away from that.
Yeah,
So they
all
had to
those actual photos that all those actual photos, they had to be doctored up to make it look exactly like that.
So the other thing that made it very Hitchcock was the fact that he used the music to scare yourself.
Yeah.
And back to your point of, you really weren't sure whether or not the child was evil or not. And rewatching it, it really does make you question, can he just hear those voices? But it was a matter of, he was just playing.
Is it just a bad
Is it
situation
just
where you have
You're just not
circumstances revolving around
the life of just a child?
Yeah.
No, that child was evil.
Well, technically,
That's to be determined.
That
well,
kid was evil.
not to spoiler alert here, but Damien didn't kill his mother.
Technically, he
No,
did not.
he did not.
Technically, the nanny did. So that's where it's a matter of,
Yeah.
was it really him, or
Yes.
did he just go down the wrong path?
That child's a devil.
Hit the
That
devil.
child's a devil.
Would it be devil? So,
them crap
but no,
out.
I think they did a great job.
four-legged child that's the devil, but I don't want to hear about that.
So that's where I think he really, this was his first where people really got to know him. When some people, it's like, Richard Donner, who? And you tell them, it's like,
Yeah.
The
What has he
Omen.
done? Yeah,
The Omen.
absolutely.
All these other films. So, but that I think really also helps set the stage for the horror genre itself to be a breakout genre, as opposed to a subsection of what do we call it? Paracinema. But
Yeah.
Which
exactly.
people also pointed out, he did miss the mark on being able to do anything, any of the writings for the two guys you mentioned before that he worked with.
Yeah.
But this spawned his own franchise.
Yes, it did, and
one of the original franchises, I would dare say, if you consider it, because he had done, let's see, the second one came out in '78. The last one was in '91.
Oh, really? That's
Yes.
The
right.
very last one was.
Yeah, they
the
did.
actual remake of the original.
Okay.
Was Donner associated with the last one?
I think he might have been a producer.
Oh, I don't know.
I'll have to double
That's
check
great.
that.
I was
Yeah.
curious.
Well, so I want to make note of that, because I'm gonna let some things out of the box here. The Wonder Midget is currently building a list of sequels that are equal or better than the original. She's Wrath of Khan, T2, Aliens, but one of the things that I guess have come to discussion about this when we were putting this together was, are the Omen sequels equal to or better than the original? And
That's debatable.
it's debatable. It actually, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah,
actually.
right.
But maybe one of the reasons it's debatable is because Richard Donner was not able to be involved in the Omen sequels. He was a bit preoccupied with another film. Whoa,
Larry,
that's okay. That would
that's
be
nothing to sneeze
Russian
at.
bullets to sneeze, of course. Those who watched this for a long time know what her sneeze sounds like. Anyway, Richard Donner was not able to be involved in the sequels because he was a bit preoccupied either in pre-production or direct production of another film that I think would go on to be even greater to his filmography than The Omen, and that's the one that the Reverend IT Geek has picked to talk about his love for Richard Donner, and that is 1978's Superman the movie. Reverend.
So as we all know that I'm the comic book, fan of the group and everything. And so, it should be no surprise getting, to come in and talk about Superman, especially when we're talking about Richard Donner and everything. And, this one again is such a impactful movie for me. In the history of Superman, we've had TV shows, we've had some of the older black and white movies and such that were always kind of a little hokey, but did their best to do it and stuff. But Richard Donner's Superman came on screen, and I mean, it's iconic, and so it's such a fashion that we get to see Superman fly. I mean, it's the first time that it looks like someone's truly flying on TV or on the movie and everything. And it's just there's so many great elements. John Williams does the score, just phenomenal. I mean, we were watching it again, and it's like, man, that's a little like Star Wars. I totally forgot John Williams to do the score. But I mean, and it's been actually a long time since I watched it. But in preparation for this, the Queen and I watched it again, and I mean, there was just.
The Queen didn't make it through.
The Queen did not make it through. But
The Queen didn't make it through? What's
no,
up
she
with
didn't.
that?
She didn't. Well, it was storming last night.
Oh, okay.
But I digress. I mean, it's funny that
This was the comic. I mean, okay, not to interrupt you.
Yeah.
This was the comic book movie that all other comic book movies were held to the standard of.
Oh yeah.
I mean, between this and Tim Burton's Batman, like this, I mean,
Yeah.
every comic book movie that's come after this, like, you better be as good as Superman movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Better be better than Superman. You better be better than Batman.
Yeah.
And Batman was great on so many different levels. But
Yes.
when you go back and look at Superman, I mean, this was watching a live comic book.
Yes.
If you will. I mean, from Christopher Reeves's look, I mean, he looks straight right out of the comic book of Clark Kent and everything. Hell, even in his Superman, he looks straight out of the comic book. And the flying scenes, are just spectacular. I mean, yes, to today's standards, yes, we understand. It can look so much better, but for that being the first time we get to see someone truly look like they're flying on TV, it's just phenomenal. And of course, this is another one that's been joked about on several occasions. I mean, Big Bang for instance, right off the bat, it's like if Superman goes to catch Lois Lane, she's falling from the helicopter, she would be slicing trees. There's no way unless he matches her speed and and decelerates and everything like. It's just great stuff. And
Okay, but what did you fast forward through though?
Yes.
I dozed off last night,
So-
and I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And you're like, fast forward.
So there are parts of the movie that don't work for you now?
Well, there's one part that's never worked for me.
Okay, what's that?
Can you read my mind?
Oh, God. Yeah.
I do
Oh, my
not
God.
know what that segment was supposed to be about,
Yeah.
but I'm just like,
Nope.
no.
Yeah.
No. I'm like, what in the world is this all about?
That was a bit of a misstep.
Yes.
I'm
I mean, it just, I don't even know what they were thinking.
Were
I
they
mean,
trying to make it into a commercial chick flick? That's
That's the only thing I can think
Well, yes,
of.
actually, because yes, if you watch the there's several documentaries that are available, and one of the things that Tom Mankiewicz said was we had to make the love story between Superman, Clark, and Lois the focal point of the story.
Yeah.
But I think that was a big misstep.
It was. I mean, I think they're gonna. I mean, so the movie is like 2 hours and 23 minutes long.
Yeah.
And so that segment, I think, runs a good 12 minutes.
At least, yeah.
And I'm like, after he drops her and then saves her, well, I'm not gonna. Let me take that back. He doesn't drop her. They're trying to.
Yeah.
She's trying to get the full flying experience. They're at fingertips, and you can see her. She's the one trying to push him, and he's like, "No, I got you." And then she's just like, "Pink," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, you're gone." And so, so I'm like, "You deserve what you got." Superman, he flew in, got you. Lois, you can't fly. You're up here with me. Hang on tight. Don't just think. I'm not trying to crush your fingers. I'm trying to be gentle here. But to me, I mean, after he kind of rescues her and stuff like that, and then this whole like love scene, I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm quite sure if I were to ever drop the Queen or Brunches or Turtle Gal or anyone, if I would have dropped you down about 10 feet and then came down and swooped you up, you would smack the shit out of me. That wasn't funny. That's not cool. Are you trying to kill me? I'm sorry, there's no love segment going on right there. Like, what the hell? There's no thanks for rescuing me after you dropped me. But anyway, no, so I digress. I get back to this. So a lot of the camera angles work for me in this movie. I mean, it's great stuff. The music works with it. The whole.
Oh my God.
I mean, the way it swells and builds. I mean, I know that's not
I'm
really.
going to say this, and I'm going to ask you this since you're such a Superman fan.
Mm-hmm.
I think that every Superman movie since then, like we're talking about Man of Steel or Superman Returns or even the Superman TV shows with Dean Cain or even the new one, they have suffered from the fact that they don't have that music.
They don't. You are correct.
I mean, that is the Superman. When that S comes up, like I hear the music lyrics say Superman.
Yes. It is
Stupid,
iconic.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's been a piece of music attributed to Superman since that has done any justice, if you will, towards it.
It's like when you start watching Clone Wars without the iconic Star Wars music.
Oh yeah.
It's like this isn't right.
Exactly.
You get used to it, but yeah.
No, I agree. Also what I found also when we're watching this, or when I was watching this, is that during the opening scene, when they're giving us the names and also with the cast, do you realize it's like Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, and then that's it for a while, and then Superman, Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute.
Richard Don.
No, he is.
He is named, but he wasn't next.
He was not.
I think it was in a Richard Donner film.
Yes.
I think is the
It's
next
like
credit.
Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, a Richard Donner film, Superman, Christopher Reeve.
That's like William Shatner presents William Shakespeare.
The thing about it was Christopher Reeve had only done one other show or one other movie before he.
I don't even know what that was. Yeah.
And I don't even know what that was. I mean, so Christopher Reeves, and we were kind of watching a documentary about that, and it was funny because Christopher Reeves, they wanted him, but I can't even remember who it was.
Warner
Brothers kept pushing him to the bottom of the list. Like they would put him at the bottom.
Really?
And then his name would some way wake it up, and then someone else would bring in a stack of people.
They wanted people like Robert Redford and Burt Reynolds.
And so he got to the bottom of the list, and there was no other actor to come in to play Superman.
Right.
And so they brought
Did they check with Nicolas Cage?
Which
by the way, we should do a review of that.
Oh my God!
Because there is a documentary
That's a train wreck waiting
about Superman Lives.
Oh yes,
and it is fantastic.
Yeah.
This is part of the reason why we got Wild Wild West with Will Smith.
Yes.
Well, and the thing about it is that they finally were like, okay, bring Christopher Reeves in. And he's this skinny teenager. What? He was 18, 19 at the time, and he's skinny. He's not built at all, and they're like.
And they put him in a Superman costume, and you can see if you watch the screen, you can see the sweat under his arm. It's like, good evening, Miss Lane.
Good evening, Miss Lane. And it's just like, okay, wait a minute.
So I will say that I so many things I love about the movie. There's elements that I'm not a fan of, like the Can You Read My Mind? But I will say also that I was not a big fan of Margot Kidder as Lois Lane. I
hated her. I did not think she was a great Lois Lane at all.
No. I agree. She, and it's not that she wasn't I don't want to say she wasn't an ugly woman, but I don't know. I mean,
boy.
But I mean, she had no appeal on screen.
Right. I agree. I agree with your statement there.
So I'm glad. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything. Everyone is beautiful of some sort, but I mean,
as a family kind of myself, I appreciate that. I mean, you can doll up only so much.
Well, and you bring out a great point.
Lipstick on a pig.
Exactly. I mean, she's a handsome woman, is what you almost call that.
Handsome woman.
She's not wrong, handsome woman.
But I mean,
She's a handsome
and
woman.
again, you know, the era that is being portrayed in, it does not do Margot Kidder any well.
Well, no,
any justice.
and Margot
any justice.
Kidder.
Thank you. That's a better word. Any
And
justice.
Margot Kidder, when she, like they said, when she came in to read, she was in cowboy boots and a cowboy hat. And because she'd been riding for so long, I guess, riding horses, she was bow-legged.
Mm.
So they were like trying to film her to make her sexy. And it's like, and that's what she said. Her and Christopher Reeves, they were like brother and sister.
Yeah.
So when they were off camera,
Right.
they were fighting. Like she said that at one point her and Christopher Reeves had been tied together for about 14 hours. And she would like stick books down in front of her breast so that she could read while they were like filming them flying through the air. And so it was just like, so her and Christopher Reeves just really didn't. I mean, she said that we were great together, but he was always in character and she was not. So
I also didn't like her voice. I thought she had an annoying voice.
She had a very smoker voice.
smoker
Yeah,
voice,
I
like
didn't like
she
That
smoked.
Marlene Dietrich
But-
kind of.
Yes.
But it also was 78, so
Okay.
I feel like everybody.
But
had
she
a
also
smoker
said
voice.
she understood that Christopher Reeve was
They're
carrying.
probably smoking on set.
Oh, there. Yeah. I mean, well, even in Superman 2, that was a great.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a great scene in Superman 2, which is I don't think
Yeah.
it's a Richard Donner movie.
No,
It
no.
is.
Well,
It is.
okay, we're gonna talk, we're gonna
Well,
circle back to that.
We're
We'll
gonna circle back to that.
to
in a
that.
second. But there's a great scene in Superman 2 that basically she's talking about getting healthy, where she's smoking. You can see the ashtray she's putting out, but she's juicing as well.
Yes.
Because she asks Clark
Yeah.
to like juice this orange for her and stuff. He catches his thumb in the
Yeah.
press
Yeah.
and all that. So it's kind of funny you bring that up because it's a great kind of really
Yeah.
sign of the times of that. It's
Right.
like I'm trying to be healthy.
Yeah.
All right, so Reverend, I'm gonna take this opportunity to dovetail into this. So one of Richard Donner's greatest admitted failures, well, I don't even know if he would admit it as a failure, disappointments, professional disappointments, was when he was hired to direct Superman. It was a 500-page script. Basically, he was directing Superman and Superman 2 at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So he was shooting all the Daily Planet scenes
Right.
for both movies on the Daily Planet. When they go to the Fortress of Solitude, he's like, I'm directing all the Fortress of Solitude movies. But they eventually, their timetable caught up with them, and they're like, okay, if we're going to get Superman the movie released, we need to just focus on Superman the movie and get that done.
Right.
And so they stopped filming Superman 2 when he filmed about 75% of it to complete Superman. And because of what the producers consider to be cost overruns or, conflicts of vision, for lack of because one of Donner's biggest things that I have taken to heart I love this word ever since I was a kid in high school and heard it, the word verisimilitude, which means believability.
Like, I'm glad you defined that because I was like, what?
Verisimilitude. It means
Bless
it's an yes. It's an old English word, but it means believability. It means
Fanboys918, that is the word of the day.
yes.
And say that one more time because I don't think.
Were it not for Robert Meyer Burnett, I would be the viceroy of verisimilitude, but he has taken that away. So verisimilitude, it basically means believability.
Post in the comments your spelling of said word.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
I
exactly
will
right.
butcher the hell out of that spelling.
Yeah. So, but the point, verisimilitude doesn't necessarily mean real. It
I
means
still
you
can't even
believe
say
it, right? Like verisimilitude,
That's what
I'm
he
gonna have
said.
to practice that shit.
and it means believability. But
I don't
for lack of a
believe
better
it.
term.
I don't believe it.
So what I'm saying, that's what I guess that's what's been my problem with all of our modern franchises was it doesn't necessarily mean real. It means you believe the world you're in. Like, like whether it be CSI, Man of Steel, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you believe what you're watching because of the world the filmmakers create. And he was dead set that this movie would ground itself in verisimilitude. And he even had, everyone has seen the whole Superman logo. He had that logo with Superman flying up with a cape that said verisimilitude behind him. He had that over his office. As you would walk, like, this movie's going to be believable, right? So he wanted the movie to be believable. You will believe that a man can fly. You will believe and it's a comic book. It's ridiculous, but we're going to make you believe it. And so he did things like he wasn't given a choice of who played Lex Luthor. Gene Hackman was cast before he was brought on. Marlon Brando as Jor-El was cast before, but it was his thing to make this thing believable. And because of that, there were some issues that brought him in conflict with the producers. So when they had to finish, they had to set Superman 2 aside to get Superman available for release. It was done on what they call a negative pickup deal, which is basically meaning you get this, we pick it up, and whatever goes over cost, that's your problem. But he had to do that to get it in the cinemas at the time. And so he figured, well, when we get done, if this movie works, we'll come back, we'll finish Superman 2. Well, because of the cost overruns and the fact that Superman was a major hit, the Salkins were like, nah, you're done. You're gone. So this Superman, the movie, would be one of Donner's greatest triumphs, but it also would kind of be a source of great heartache. Because he shot 75% of Superman 2, only about 49% would eventually arrive in the theaters because Richard Lester, who they brought in to finish Superman 2, wanted director credit. So he reshot a lot of Donner's stuff.
So we have another Justice League on our hands.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
the first Justice League.
Yes, we do. This was the original Justice League.
That's a great point.
That's a fantastic point. Let's talk
Look at
about
the
that.
Queen. Look at the Queen bringing it.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
got nuggets every now and then.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things I was going to say about
About this movie that I liked that he did, and he did this often, was he would do a little bit part. Stan Lee's kind of known for that, but Donner started that.
Yeah.
So in Superman and Superman 2, he played man walking in front of diner. So to give that
Yeah.
realism of the flying,
Yeah.
he's the dude.
Yeah.
And both times he's looking up and walking in front of that diner. I don't think it's the same scene. I think they shot it separately, but he did get the producer credit on number 2, right?
Yes, he did. Yes,
So-
and eventually, his personal assistant Michael Thal would what's the word? Persuade him to go finish his cut for verisimilitude. So if you watch the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2, verisimilitude, yes. If you watch the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2, in my opinion, it's a superior film, even though Superman 2 really does work. But I think that the Donner cut works better with a couple of things that Donner wasn't able to finish. I mean, anyway, that's a podcast for another day. But it was one of Donner's greatest tragedies, and he basically disowned that film because he wasn't able to finish it. And they even said when they went back and reconstructed with his footage that he kind of when they got to the Richard Lester footage that they needed to basically make the narrative complete, he just kind of checked out. He's like, yeah, okay, put that in there. I mean, he was that personally upset that he didn't get to finish his vision of the film.
Right.
But and because of that, he ended up in some legal ramifications with the Salkins. He ended up with there was lawsuits, things going back and forth. And so as a result, he started directing some more smaller films like All the Right Moves that weren't really financially successful, or the Richard Pryor film, The Toy.
Oh,
I love that movie.
I know, but Richard Pryor he's kind of disowned that film, but I love The Toy. I don't know. Richard Pryor was like, I never should have made that movie.
I was just a child.
I mean,
That's the greatest movie ever.
I always
He
thought
directed
that
The
was,
Toy, for God's sake. Yeah.
I always loved the comedic interaction.
Jackie
Jackie Gleason. It was
Yeah.
hilarious.
But I guess Richard Pryor felt like it was a little too racial or a little too.
I can understand.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, he got bought to be this kid's toy, and
Yeah,
I
so,
could see that. I could
Yeah.
see that. So
But that was a different generation.
It
too.
was.
It
It
was.
was.
and it was making fun of those people.
People.
Yes, it was.
Exactly.
Yes, the ending
It
is very
wasn't-
making fun of those types of people. Yeah.
It wasn't. It truly was making fun of the rich white people
Yeah.
because they bought this toy, and so But Richard Pryor.
But yeah,
Richard Pryor, Richard Pryor is not known for his
PC.
PC. Let's be politically correct while
Yeah, he
we're
wrote
doing
the script for Blazing Saddles, for God's sake. He wrote the script for Blazing Saddles.
he had his own racial bias in
Yeah.
his stand-up comics.
Yeah.
So that was something that he really. Okay, you can blame Donner for that. Okay,
Well,
whatever.
that's okay, because eventually Donner would kind of get out of all this morass, and he would partner with Steven Spielberg, and he would create a film that would ultimately become the calling card of an entire generation. That's right, folks. I'm speaking of the choice of the fangirl's choice of 1985's The Goonies. So let's get the fangirls talk on that.
Were you alive yet?
No.
It was not. Wasn't.
But
I
Grew up in a good family that introduced you to the
so
Goonies.
there'd be almost 6 years before I was born from the Goonies.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but it's one of my favorites. It's a big
Because
pop.
she's had to watch it her whole entire life.
Whereas my spouse does not care for it at all.
What?
So
Austin, I will call you out from upstairs.
yeah. So has he seen it all the way through? I don't think
No.
so. But he's not a fan of it.
Because Austin was born when?
85.
85. So when the
He
movie
was
came
born the year
out.
the movie came out.
Yeah.
I was born the year that Superman came out. It makes maybe why I fell asleep last night. No,
So-
I think that Goonies is. I think it's one of. To me, it kind of describes Fanboys918.
Yeah.
We're like this ragtag group of friends that like together till the end.
Yeah.
Goonies never say die.
Die.
Right.
Fanboys 918, never say die.
You know, and that's something that, so we went from 77 to 95 or 85 where Donner was fighting so he didn't really do a whole lot, and then he got the Goonies. And, the Goonies is one of those that is almost like a Stand By Me type of movie. These friends.
Very large pop culture.
And I mean, let's face it, the people that came out of the Goonies.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, you got Thanos,
Sean Astin,
Josh Brolin. You've got Samwise Gamgee, who played Sean Astin, and of course
Corey
you got
Feldman.
Corey Feldman.
One of the Corys.
Well, and then what's her name?
And then you have
Martha Plimpton.
Martha
Yeah.
Plimpton that plays Steph.
Yeah,
And
she's
Steph-
doing stuff currently.
Oh,
I mean, I love
Raising Hope. She was
Raising
Raising
Hope.
Hope in Raising. I love.
Oh, yeah, she was, wasn't she?
Yes,
I
was
forgot
the
about
grandma
that.
in Raising Hope.
Yes.
And
Oh
so,
my God, I never even put that together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I find interesting just because I am such a Goonie when it comes to this stuff. Donner paid for those kids to go to college.
Yeah, he supported them through school.
He
So that's-
supported them all the way. Chunk, oh my gosh.
Jeff Cohen.
Jeff
Cohen,
Cohen.
yeah.
He's an attorney.
He's one of children's stars.
Yes. And so, and it's one of those things, Data, 007, or 00 negative, and it's just, I don't know. I'm
Spend months and months
months
and fitting them and standing on them. Big guys make fun of me.
Yeah.
Like,
Another womb.
I think booby traps. God.
What I
That's what I said.
Booby traps.
And that's a classic line.
Yeah.
I mean, how many decades have we been, every time one of us gets tongue-tied,
Yeah.
we still say that. That's what
Well,
I said.
I think that's the thing about this film for me. This is the one that stands out for me. I know we're gonna get to Lethal Weapon, and I love those, but this one I remember. Like
Mm-hmm.
we quote it all the time still. We reference the Goonies all the time, and I feel like it's a reflection of like the friend group here. But it's one of those. Even when I still watch it now, it's not hokey to me. It's like
No,
it's like
really
a group
not.
of friends that are like, you're kids and you're going on a bicycle adventure.
Yeah.
Right.
Going on an adventure. See,
Well,
Samwise still the hero.
Well, and also,
Still the hero.
okay, look at movies things now like Stranger Things.
Oh,
Stranger
very
Things is so
so-
Goonies.
It
Yeah.
is channeling the Goonies. It makes me so happy to watch Stranger Things because that's what it took you back to that nostalgia
Yeah.
of that time. And you had Cyndi Lauper's Good Enough,
Oh, yeah.
It's a great.
Which
the
Donner-
music was great.
He
Donner directed that.
He directed
Donner directed.
Oh, he directed the
He did the
music
video.
video
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was looking at some tidbits on IMDb because I know that you guys do all sorts of research and we're more fly by the seat of our pants kind of girls.
Yes.
So the pirate ship was actually constructed and built like live scale, and he didn't let the cast see the ship until the scene
Right.
was shot. So they slide in, boom, hit the water. Josh Brolin is like, holy shit! And they had to reshoot.
That's not what a kid would say. Bullshit, it wouldn't.
Yeah, like every kid would say that.
Apparently,
Today's kid would
there
say.
was a lot of like,
But like the bones, like they didn't know that they were gonna fall either. I think that was a real, like those were real.
I'll tell you. So for the longest time, there's at the end where they're going through the cops and all that stuff. Yeah, they're at the end and they've been rescued and everything. And Data comes back and it's just like, we had to fight the octopus. The octopus is very scary. I was like, I guess they're just making up stories because I never knew.
Yeah.
But there's an actually deleted scene where there's an actually octopus inside where the pirate ship is.
Turtle Gals watched that scene. Well, maybe you got the rest of you have too. But what did you guys think of it? Do you think they were wise to cut that?
Yes, I think so.
It was a little hokey.
I don't think the tech was quite
It
there.
wasn't. What's your big word?
Verisimilitude.
Yeah,
Verisimilitude. Do you believe it? I don't.
No, yeah. And that's kind of, in the water slide. Who didn't want to go down that slide?
I still want to go down
that slide. We'll ride that slide.
I mean, flipping you and you're coming out a different direction. Come on. And going back to even when they're in the well. They're at the bottom of that well.
That's what you do at the bottom of the well.
Yeah. And then of course Mouth is like
picking up stuff.
Picking up coins.
Treat me like a woman, man.
This was my dream.
That's a very touching scene.
Yes.
And
That's
it's
very
like
Kennedy, that's your machine, you idiot.
and how many of us really, when we were children, did that? We threw pennies into the wishing well or into a fountain to get what we wanted, what we thought we wanted, to make our dreams come true, because they truly didn't want to leave each other.
Yep.
And
because that was the whole thing, is that they were very upset they were having to leave their town because it was
their friends.
Yeah, it was being turned into a golf course. Because one family was like, no, it needs to be a golf course. I'm like, well, you have a full elementary, high school, and middle school here. Why are you kicking people out of their homes? Like, that's a lot of money to do. And then, you have a full, the dad was a museum curator.
Mom was just kind of crazy. Mom was just crazy.
Well, I gotta say, Mom, and again, I can't remember the actress's name. Mom was always in Richard Donner's movies.
Oh yeah.
She was in Lethal Weapon. She was a psychologist. She was. I think she showed up as Gail Wallens in Die Hard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm Gail Wallens. But she was in, and Richard Donner used her a lot in his film. Sorry.
I'll say one thing though, is that I'll tell you, Goonies also really made me think that my parents are boring. Why don't I have an attic full of crap that I can go play with?
Right.
I mean, I've got nothing to go do. How am I supposed to find these adventure times when no attic? My mom's a bookkeeper. Stepdad's a truck driver, and I'm like, you guys are boring. You suck.
Well, buddy, you have to consider you are that dad now.
Well, no, I've got.
You are the one with all the
cool face. You got Captain America's shield and Thor's hammer back here.
Exactly. That's why I did this, because of the Goonies.
That's right.
So that way, my kids will always have
I think the Goonies is a snapshot of all of our childhood. I mean, it was a magical moment of not only our lives, but as America. It's a snapshot of Americana in a time that will never come again. And
No, because I think that the kids now that love Stranger Things and all of that, they don't actually experience any of those things that happen.
They don't understand that you have a rule that you need to be home by the time your light is on. Like, if the lights come on, you should be home.
Yes, you're
and
I
even
agree. Yeah.
even
How to ride a
me,
bicycle.
I had to follow that rule because in the 90s we didn't have cell. These kids will never not have cell phones.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, they'll never not have the internet. They'll never not have television that wasn't.
I mean, back in the 80s.
Get your cell phone out and call 911.
The Fratellis are crooks.
There's a quick 911. I solved the mystery by looking it up through Google on my phone. Movie's over in 20 minutes. Thank you very much. Save my time.
The Fratellis, he escaped. Like, the first thing is he escapes from jail because they've set the precinct on fire.
Or just a circle around it.
And why does he still have his scarf? He's still in regular clothes.
Yeah.
He just got picked up. He hadn't been processed and sent on.
What else?
I'm just trying to make shit up.
But you have that's how he escapes prison. They end up in a what 4x4
It's a
race on the beach.
ORV. It's an
ORV.
ORV.
Bullet holes.
I'm SUV. It's an ORV.
ORV, off-road vehicle.
Yeah.
Bullet holes.
Bullet holes.
Big as a
Yeah.
Bullet holes.
Now I got a question, and I watched the credits after we watched Goonies to find out. But one of the police cops that are on the ATVs at the end where they find the kids, is it one of them Richard Donner?
Yes.
Yes.
That's his cameo.
Yes.
He's one of the cops
Okay.
at the end.
It's goobers. It's them goobers.
Well,
Yeah.
and like Sloth, I didn't realize that actor. He was actually an NFL football player.
Yes.
And he was in a lot of things, but he was always made up.
Yeah, he wears that Oakland Raiders T-shirt at one point in the movie, which is one of the football teams he played for.
Yep.
But he died when he was 38.
Yeah.
He was unfortunately he was very into drugs and steroids and stuff.
He
So.
was very
But when
white.
he pulls his shirt open,
Yeah,
you
he
see
had
the
Superman.
Superman theme. I'm like, how did- oh, but because Richard Donner made this movie.
Right.
Yeah.
So, in Goonies, truly, I think Goonies bringing in Will Wheaton, we're all connected. I mean, Star Trek, we've been talking about Bill Shatner, and then we brought in Will Wheaton to Stand By Me.
Yeah.
I mean, Stand By Me was the next step in Goonies.
Right. Yeah.
And the Goonies did it first where they found the dead body. Where it was a skeleton. It's a stick, he puts him in the freaking freezer. Chuck is in with the freezer with the stick. I smell Rocky Road. Let's go and give me some Rocky Road.
All right, I'm going to say something right now.
I kind of love Chuck.
And I hope I'm not. This is not to shame anyone in this movie, but when Chuck finds the ice cream, he tries to eat it, and then they take it away. There might be someone who I've seen get that face.
Oh, but apparently, if you listen in that scene, when they take the spoon from him, Richard Donner starts laughing, and it's on the. They didn't cut it.
Oh, really?
It's in the background that I don't know that was planned. So they take the spoon from him, and he starts to chuckle in the background, and it didn't get cut from the movie. So I'm gonna have to listen next time to see if I hear him laughing.
Easter eggs.
I'm not saying that maybe Brunch and Bullets might have given me that facial expression a couple of times in my life.
Chunk was my favorite. Chunk was my favorite, especially about the one time I took my uncle's toupee and I put it on my face to play Moses in Hebrew school.
Oh, I love the one where he's like,
I
I took
vomited up.
spoons and it's like, puts it about,
So that story I just read. I guess
the violin.
The actor was like, "Oh no, that's not based on a true story, but it is. Steven Spielberg did it."
Oh!
That's based on something
Really?
that Spielberg did.
That's amazing.
Love it.
That's awesome.
So,
But no, Chuck was my favorite always. I felt like he didn't get to have the adventure because he was like, "Go get the police," and he was
Oh, he
Like,
was kind of
is that the
silent,
wrong-
wasn't he?
Like,
Yeah,
there are
But
some
that's how he
that-
met Sloth and the
It is how he made
when they show it on TV, there are extra scenes between Sloth and Chunk where they're following the trail
Yes.
of the kids.
And they're beating on the pipes and they
Yes.
come in, oh yeah, they've been through here.
Mikey's been through here.
And
Yes.
then they push it up and
There's car wrecks. And
That's hysterical.
yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
all.
and that's
of-
never been released, I don't think, for digital.
No, I don't
It's
think
only
so.
when they aired on TV.
Yeah.
Wow.
I hate when they just release stuff that's on
Well,
TV.
Oh,
That's
you mean
fine.
like Dirty
So-
Dancing and the extra scenes that aren't really
Okay.
anywhere?
Harry Potter
So
does that too.
here's
Bothers
a
me.
funny story about
When
that.
those kids are having
Yes,
they're
yes.
doing it in the carriages out in
Anyway, yes, it
That's
bothers
all
me.
totally off Richard
We
Donner.
don't-
It's gone into a Harry Potter moment.
This is called real love.
But,
That's right. So-
but you couldn't have Harry Potter without the Goonies. Because it's basically
It's about kids.
They're the good
Oh my God, you cannot have Harry Potter
Any
without
kid
Goonies.
movie now has to think about it being all attributed to the
Dude,
Goonies.
you can't. There's so many
Goonies never
things.
say die.
Yeah,
Goonies
it's
never
like
say
they're
that.
all set in the mid-'80s.
when they do these shows now. Like,
yeah. But I mean,
Everything.
honestly, Harry
Harry Potter,
Potter
they were
was
class of
in the
98.
90s. They were the class of 98.
They graduated
so,
the year after me.
Well, and what I find interesting is like Harry Potter is a progression. Like you got Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then you've got all these things. The whole Spielberg generation. It's building the Goonies. I mean that's crazy. I never even thought about that.
The Goonies was the start.
You think Goonies? I think Raiders of the Lost Ark was the start, and then it built to good because the Goonies is kids of our age going on Raiders of the Lost Ark type adventure.
So again, Donner has set that pose.
Yes.
And
from there, everything has just expounded.
Yeah.
But I think that the Goonies, like, they set the precedent for watching an adult watching a movie
About kids.
starring kids.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That
I don't even like watching my own kids. Why do I want to watch a movie about kids?
like you identify with the friendship they have and like that bond that you had with people when you were that age. And
Well, okay, I'm going to say there's people in this room. I've got that bond.
Yeah.
There's like
Fanboys918 was
Yeah.
created out of that same.
We're the Goonies.
and one the fact that we would ride our bikes. So like, whoa, my parents would shit. Pardon my French. If they knew where I was riding to right now.
Amen to that.
And I'm riding. Whoa, this is freaking cool.
Well, mine is railroad tracks. We weren't allowed on the railroad tracks, and I grew up in Inola, Oklahoma. That is nothing but railroad tracks. And, you know, we were not allowed on the railroad tracks, but by golly, we walked the high track, we walked the low track. I mean,
And your dad's at home right now going,
Oi!
yeah.
I knew it. I did not know that.
That was your mother's fault. I was on the road.
Yes. What?
It was
talking
Robin's
about?
idea.
It was Robin's idea.
I did not authorize that. Yeah.
Robin, you know, doing the whole
Footloose.
riding on the back of the two trucks. You
Your
know,
sister
that was my
did that.
sister.
My sister-in-law
Your sister-in-law, yeah,
did the
100%.
Footloose.
Riding on the trucks.
And
yes.
everybody wonders why Devin is the way
Like
Devin
he
is.
Gets it from his mama.
Yes.
But
So-
that's
All
really
right.
like where the Goonies started, and so you can't have these adventures that children are having, like in Harry Potter, where you can't have that without the Goonies. Like,
All right, so I'm going to ask you guys a question since you guys are talking about Goonies. There's been some chatter that when we were starting to put this together, and I kind of looked at it, that Goonies would not work today. Like the way the adults
No.
relate
Well-
to the kids, and it's too cruel. I'm like screw you people. This is awesome. What do you guys think?
I think the cruel comes from, and I can say this because I am a millennial, and the millennial parent in my age is now starting to have children.
right.
And so my age is now starting
Dogs
to
are
become
great.
the parents. And we kind of made a joke. So, a girl at my work is having a baby. She's a lot younger than me by like 5 or 6 years. She's younger than my sisters. So, but she's having a baby, and like, she was like, "I'm gonna be a helicopter parent." So I think that's where a lot of like today it couldn't be made because there are a lot more helicopter parents. You can't. No. You need to stay with me. You need to do this. You need to stay here. Like
kids now don't get to go do
They
whatever
don't-
they want.
they don't get to
also
go
don't
out and play.
communicate face to face.
No, they've got their little.
I mean, there's so many people that are now like, well, my friends that I play this game with. Okay, well, what have you ever met this person? No.
They're going on the virtual adventure together.
Yeah, like
which isn't quite the same.
A lot of it is their friends are online. They don't really have the friendships in school anymore. Some of them do, especially if they go to a smaller
especially for the
school.
last year, none of the kids were allowed to go to freaking school.
So now everything's online, so you can't have that. And they say it's cruel because parents weren't paying attention to their
Well,
children.
but it's
They see it
interesting.
as a neglect type situation.
The kids now, though, they are big fans of Stranger Things.
Stranger Things.
Right. Stranger Than Fiction. Jeez, I've had a lot to drink.
That's what she said.
Booty traps.
So, you know, they love those things. They're looking back at those things, and I think they're seeing them as things that they didn't get to experience. And that's why they're kind of living through those where like we love them because we actually did have the bicycles, and I mean I didn't go on any adventure or anything, but like I rode my bicycle around the neighborhood, and my parents were like, okay, see ya.
Be back by dinner.
Yeah.
Right. Back by the street lights come on.
I would even say, and so it was funny, during the summer, my mom would say, I can't go up to Pizza Hut that was off the Admiral because I'm crossing Admiral. And of course, at this point, I had my own newspaper up. And I had a newspaper up, so I had my own money. I'm like, well, I'm going to go up to Pizza Hut and grab lunch. Little $5 mini pizzas and a drink. And I'm like, that's where I'm going. And so you're right. You had these little adventures when we were that age, some of us here, that kind of defied the parents. And you're right. Kids today, I don't think get to have that opportunity to explore the boundaries that help found you and create you and mold you into the person you're going to be.
And
I think they're having those experiences at a later age.
Yeah, and because they can't go anywhere without being tracked. Because your cell phones now, like, all I had to do, like last night, I didn't know where you guys were while I was watching your dog. So I just tracked Dad's phone. And that's basically how it started, like,
the roles in reverse. They're tracking you now.
Oh my God, where's he
silver
gonna be?
alerts, you know, and you'll be on the
silver alerts, exactly.
Mom and Dad are wandering off the reservation.
But like that's where they have these phones, so now you know where they are, and then you're looking at it. What the hell is this person doing all the way across town? Like
your dot is on the map here. You're supposed to be over here. What are you doing?
Yeah. Or I get phone calls. Track your father. He's supposed to be home. If you had an iPhone, wouldn't have to do that. But that's where a lot of it is. They didn't get to have
in
that.
1985, you would have been like, well, shit, I don't know where John is.
I don't know where he's at.
I have to wait till he
But we live and
be down a
survive to
wishing
fight
well.
another day.
But I mean, if you think about it, these kids were gone. These kids left at like 5 o'clock at night. Because it was later in the evening.
Yeah.
So it was like at 7 o'clock in the morning, I need you out of here.
Well, no, because he was taking the flag down.
Yeah,
That's right.
His dad was taking
the flag down. The mom had come in with the cleaner.
Which, by the way, is very politically incorrect in this day and age.
But so
this drug goes here, this drug goes here.
I'm in a crazy house. But they left at like 5:30 o'clock at night. And then they were gone
for 24 hours.
At least 24 hours in the depths of the earth.
Because Troy and them found them at the
well. And it was dark.
Right.
So they didn't call.
What are you doing at the bottom of the wishing well?
But they didn't call. Like Mom and Dad didn't call
the police.
They didn't report them as missing.
Oh no!
Because they didn't know where they were. Because at the end, when they do end up on
Brad, you don't come home until you find your brother. And that was the last thing that I went out.
If he lost his inhaler again.
Or he threw it away.
He threw it away.
But like when they get back to the beach, it's the next day because it's dawn.
Yeah.
And so he was like, well, it's them goobers. They weren't looking for them.
Yep.
He was like, there they are. Like, they're just here. They showed up here. So.
How you guys missed the fangirls?
Wow.
We took a hiatus.
Actually, the Fangirls have hijacked this. This is amazing because I did not anticipate the Goonies taking this much of our talk.
Because Goonies never die.
Goonies never die.
Whoa.
Wait.
Hold on.
Hang on. We got a Goonie.
We got a Goonie dog here.
Okay, there he goes.
We went on an hour late because you took all the cords out. So
Watch out, sloth. Watch
but
out there.
there you go. Here's the thing. I never thought the Goonies was that great of a financial success. I mean, it wasn't until later, as people were like, "Oh, I want that booby trap movie." Like, what? So
the booby trap.
yeah. So the former Mrs. Geek Boy, BS, her little brother, like, I want that booby trap movie. I'm like, what? The booby trap movie.
Who? Was it Bobby?
It was Alan.
Oh,
It was
Alan.
Alan. It was Bubba. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, the movie. I'm like, it took me talking to, oh, you talking about the Goonies? Like, yeah. So I bought the Goonies for him. And that, to him, that was, at that time, that was the greatest Christmas present he would ever receive in his life, was the Goonies on VHS, all right? Because he loved that movie. And I'm like, I mean, it took me a while as an adult to appreciate the Goonies as a movie. And I don't know how Richard Donner felt about that. I mean, it was just another job, but he did a great job. He directed a cavalcade of children.
Well, yeah, and so I guess Steven Spielberg, at the last week of shooting, told all of the cast he was planning a surprise. He was flying them all to Hawaii to see Richard Donner.
Oh,
So
really?
basically, he had to tell all the kids, I need you to, like, shut him out, be distant. You can't spill the beans that they're all flying out to Hawaii. So, like, Richard Donner couldn't figure out why they were all being so, like, cold and distant.
Yeah.
And they show up a week later in Hawaii after shooting ends.
Oh my God. I'm sure Donner's thinking.
Spielberg, let's just fly you all to Hawaii. It's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm sure Donner's thinking, I want to get away from these kids. Man.
No, because I mean, Donner, obviously, I think Donner truly loved every single one of those kids, or he wouldn't have paid for them to go to college.
Yeah, he and his wife.
Him and his wife both. It was
Well, and I think I mean, in that era, you didn't have the the parents weren't the managers.
No.
They weren't the managers. They were just there because,
Well-
like, now the parent is the manager. So
Well,
if you're a
right.
child star,
Is it-
90% of the time.
I was gonna say Shirley Temple, Brooke Shields' mom. I mean,
Drew Barrymore.
Drew
Free
Barrymore.
Brittany.
Yeah.
Hashtag
Free Britney.
Free Britney.
Wow, Jack. Wow, this shit got
It's
But,
getting
like, they
political.
But
Political.
truly, Donner appreciated. I think he enjoyed everybody that he worked with, and it came
Through in his work.
Yeah.
It came through in the greatness of every movie that he's done.
And the dogs liked it, obviously.
They get two bars.
Works up.
Yeah. So anyway, so after the Goonies, wow, that was a long discussion. Richard Donner really got involved in film. He had the Goonies, and he had a lot of other things happening. But he got involved in a film, and that would become a film series that was more of a lethal nature, shall we say? We'll talk about that. That series would become legendary. I believe we're going to talk about that at the end. We're going to save that for a roundtable at the end. But he would continue to put out movies that resonated, and one of those that I don't quite think it landed financially. I mean, it made money, but it didn't make the money they wanted it to be. But it would since become a holiday classic starring Bill Murray, as we're all aware of, and it would basically be his take on the Scrooge narrative, the Christmas Carol, basically. And when we threw out the movies that we were going to talk about, everybody kind of took theirs for whatever reason. I can't believe that the
In my defense, I never got the text message.
that Runcham Bullets did not grab Scrooge. Okay,
It's my favorite.
anyway,
But I didn't get the text message.
But anyway, Mr. Narwhal, through commander of the 918 Northern Command Post, has latched onto that, and so we're gonna via the miracle of the interwebs, we're gonna get Mr. Narwhal's take on his thoughts on Richard Donner's classic Christmas masterpiece, Scrooge.
Hey there, 918ers. Mr. Narwhal here from the Northern Command Post. I wanted to take a moment and talk about my favorite film from director Richard Donner. Few ways are better at having your work live on beyond you than making something for Christmas. For example, I'm willing to bet that no one below the age of 50 has ever heard a song from Gene Autry or Bing Crosby that's not a Christmas carol. Christmas movies are no exception. White Christmas, Miracle on 34th Street, and It's a Wonderful Life have kept the cinematic legacy of their filmmakers and actors alive long past their deaths. Now, in terms of modern holiday classics, few movies are as well loved and well made as Richard Donner's contribution to this genre, Scrooged. Starring Bill Murray, Karen Allen, Carol Kane, Bobcat Goldthwait, Buster Poindexter, and a ton of cameos. Scrooge was a kind of irreverent holiday film that I had never seen before, funny and sarcastic, yet heartfelt and poignant. I remember sitting in the theater watching Bill Murray's classic monologue at the end of the film, thinking I'd never heard a better explanation of what the Christmas spirit really was. And then having my mind blown by Murray breaking the fourth wall and talking directly to the audience. In reading up for this tribute, I ran across a story about Richard Donner on this film. So filming for Scrooge began in December of 1987. And with Christmas approaching, Richard Donner asked if the production could have Christmas Day off. But the executives at Paramount Pictures refused, insisting that they continue filming on Christmas Day. So, at the end of the day, on December 24th, he officially fired the entire cast and crew. And 2 days later, on the 26th, he rehired everyone. That little break allowed everyone to spend Christmas with their families, which I think is absolutely appropriate for this kind of film. If that's not a great director, I don't know what is. Rest in peace, Mr. Donner. I'll think of you every Christmas.
Is. But I will say that we talked earlier, and I think between Scrooge and the Goonies and some other things, Dollar can move in and out of various genres at will. As a result, he was approached in the early 90s to direct a big screen adaptation of The Wild Wild West, which was a television show that he had directed multiple episodes of. So why wouldn't he be a great, approach to take that? So he was, he cut his teeth on that show. He was going to direct a version of Wild Wild West with the script by Shane Black, who, by the way, wrote which we'll talk about later. And he wanted Mel Gibson to star as James West, but for various reasons, that project collapsed. For good reason. We got Wild Wild West that we would eventually get. But the one starring Will Smith and Kevin Kline. But the idea of doing a Western was still in Donner's mind, and so he instead redirected his energy to a big screen adaptation of another iconic Western that he had directed, which brings us to the Wonder Midget's pick, 1994's Maverick.
I really love this movie. He already had his chops as far as doing Westerns on television, working on some films, but he'd already set up several franchises. We had the Superman franchise, we had Lethal Weapon, Goonies, all these people that he had worked with throughout his career. And then to culminate it with Maverick in the way that it did, I like that he brought in James Garner as Zane Cooper and not as the original Maverick. Mel Gibson was at his heyday. But the fan pandering that he did in this film just tickled me pink. Margot Kidder doing her cameo as Margaret Mary, which apparently she and Garner had played the love interests together on another show. So that was kind of one of those hat tips and joking back to that show where they had worked together. Gosh, late 60s, something like that. I don't remember what that show was. But then to bring in Glover, to have that second window break where they kind of stare at each other, that was funny. But you've got great cowboys in there like James Coburn, Alfred Molina. I loved him in this role. But also Graham Greene is one of my favorite character actors. And he and Mel Gibson together, him playing Joseph, the Indian chief, that was hysterical. Perfect Mary. And you can just tell that they got along together, everybody that worked on this film. But I'm not sure who did the scripting. The music was great. Again, those things of we can't really afford the main music, but let's throw something up. But then they had these other guest stars. Clint Black was in there, so he did one of the songs. So he got acting credit as well as music credit on the movie. But the cinematography really brought back the great vistas of Western movies. And, being a big Star Trek fan, which was a space Western, I can appreciate true Westerns.
I love Westerns.
And so the photography by the mid-90s was so next level that just the sunsets and the views and the paddle boat, they did a great job with a lot of that. So, but Jodie Foster, this was probably one of my very favorites of hers. She's just done Silence of the Lambs. We'd known her from the after school specials, all of those. Who didn't love her in the after school specials? But to see her,
Escape from Witch Mountain, was she in that one?
No, different girl. But
which one was what one?
I don't know. I forget her name, but she was in all those Disney things.
Yeah,
which one was she in? I was trying to think which one is.
She was in all of them.
Well, she was
in Freaky Friday.
She was in Freaky Friday.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
So she did Freaky Friday. She also did an after-school special that touched on young girls, and that's when you started. They started coming out and talking more about child trafficking. And so she did a very adult version when she was about 12 of a movie touching on that and got into a little photography. So she already was a seasoned actress on some very mature topics. So by the time 94 came around, she's only 32 years old. She's in her prime. She looks fabulous in everything they put her in. But to see her, it's such a prissy, personality and mannerism about her just was next level for me.
And a gambler.
And a gambler.
And a pretty decent pickpocket.
She was really great. The way they interacted with each other, the humor.
Yeah, it was great.
But with all of them, one of my favorite parts, people like Denver Pyle, who played Uncle Jesse, get to see him in something post Hazard County, which I should have sent that one picture. He did lots of Cowboys stuff too back in the day, and to see him clean shaven, you almost wouldn't recognize him. But just all the people that he brought back in, James Coburn, he'd worked with him before.
Jack Palance in that?
No, Palance was not, but that's he was, I think, up for the part that Coburn took.
That's right.
So, but it made a decent killing at the box office. They left it open a little bit for a sequel, which they never did. But again, this is one of those movies I don't think it needed one. So, but that's kind of my 2 cents on it. I really love it. The photography, the music, the cameos, the pandering to the fans, and including everybody that he had worked with before, and all those hat tips to the other movies.
I think, this movie, in my opinion, is what made, I'm just going to go ahead and say it out there, Richard Donner, it was the king of the hidden gems in his movies. And he would always bring in little hat tips here and there. But this movie, it was a truckload of gems.
It was.
Especially in the poker room. I mean,
oh my God, yes.
The final poker room. Yeah. And it's just, everywhere you looked, there was somebody that you recognized. Oh my God.
Oh, there's so-and-so from that.
That's fabulous.
It just that was half the fun of the movie, was who did you see? And I know Donner was in there somewhere himself. So, but what did you guys think of this movie? I mean, in a way, I kind of felt like they were bringing back the Western. They did all the great Western, hit all the great Western things, the spaghetti Western, shooting them in the hands and diffusing everything with, humor as opposed to
the Hardaway Stagecoach.
Oh my God! So this movie hit every Western trope, and I loved it.
Yeah,
the stuntmen in this movie were phenomenal. So
yeah.
We ever get the Fanboys918 award show going, the first awards we're going to do is action and stunts.
Yes.
So, and that's
been a very driving force for you for a long time. Is that you really think that's a underappreciated genre that's in the movie industry that's just doesn't get the recognition it definitely deserves.
And they're artists themselves. They're performers. And
they
when
are.
you think about how grandiose they have to do everything, it's stage level and beyond. Plus, you've got all your pyrotechnics
and that little bit of danger.
Yep.
But the stuntman who was Mel Stuntman, that he was pretty phenomenal, and he had a little humor in what he was doing. So I appreciate the fact that he put that in there as well.
So I will say that Maverick is a great movie that I enjoy watching so many times. Being a card player, I'm not saying I'm a great card player. I'm just saying I like to play cards, especially Texas Hold'em. And
you are a great card player. We do love to.
If I was a great card player, I definitely would be doing that for a living and not in IT.
Your wife will not let you do that. She doesn't like the whole chance.
She took the only gamble by burying me, and that's it. So
I like to have something to show.
You put it all on a good run and bad luck. Yeah.
So she likes to see the fruits of her spending, and while I sometimes, if you're a gambler or you play cards, sometimes you don't get that. But anyway, no, it's a great storyline of basically how in the West they got to the big game, and everything that he did to make sure he was there. And I mean, and you hit it right on the head. It's like he goes through every Western trope, to finally get to the big table to play that. And I mean, who hasn't, been sitting at, if you're again a card player, who hasn't sat there and like wanted to do the hat moment. I mean, I've even done it on several times where basically I'm down to my last chips, I go all in, and I don't even look at my cards. They're like, aren't you gonna look at them? I'm like, no, we'll see what happens. And because I mean, it doesn't matter at this point. And so I've done the whole thing, like And you know, sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But you know what? It adds definitely a different level of fun and excitement about card playing.
Well, you got a 1 in 52 chance.
Yes.
Of the magic word.
Right.
And that was one thing they kind of hinted at.
They tried to, when they were talking about the script, there was a scene that they actually cut out and hitting all the tropes. You know, the guy that was the stagecoach guy and why they keep asking me if I'm okay. But there was an old hermit that apparently Maverick has a scene with, and he's discussing that. And she tells him no, but he's never been able to do it successfully. And she tells him, well, you do have the magic in you. Well, it turns out that's Linda Hunt. Oh, and you know, I love Linda Hunt, but but that scene was completely cut out of the movie. However, I don't think that the way they described it, that scene needed to be in there, because I think the buildup of the card game plus the music and that last hand, how they shot the entire scene, I don't think that they needed to have the magic in there. I think it just needed to be that it's magic, it's chance. Is it luck? What is it? It doesn't matter. It happened when he needed it to happen.
Well, even his response to it, you know, when it happens, he's like, you know, he just, and then of course he just goes into that like muttering, and I wish, and it was, it's like, it was just.
You're babbling again.
Yes,
you're babbling.
I mean, Mel Gibson really sold that role, and
he did. He was only 38 when he did that.
Oh wow!
Wow, really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, awesome, great movie.
I do have to say one thing, talking about stunts, and not to go back a couple of movies, but in The Omen, I just want to state, Gregory Peck did all his own stunts. That climbing that fence, and then climbing back over that fence, and then kicking that lady.
Well, he also had to sell the point
that
the fence stabbed his arm.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That didn't really happen.
No.
But yeah, he had to fake it real good. But yeah, he had to climb that fence, and then he had to kick that nanny. And
I'm just saying.
But Donner had a way of selling that to his cast. Like, man, this is your project.
You know, he made it believable.
Yeah.
He made it.
Verisimilitude.
There you go. That's the word, people. That's the word.
We need that
Verisimilitude.
We need that. Actually, I want that in the fan cave. Oh,
There you go.
verisimilitude. But,
We'll need to work on getting that on a banner.
yes, we will. Because, but here's the thing. Robert Meyer Burnett has kind of absconded with that, but I still believe, and that's why I have.
Why are you giving him free
enterprise on that kind of stuff? I don't know. Well,
It's called props.
because it's called props, and he and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same space dock. In that, that's my biggest issue with a lot of our current franchises, whether it be Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever. That if I don't believe it. I mean, and I'm not saying, like I said, I don't mean real. I mean, if you don't make me believe it, then I can't buy into it.
Yeah, that's why I have
Star
a
Trek
problem
Discovery,
with
I'm
space
looking
magic.
at you. But anyway,
Let it go, bro.
so
Let it
the
go.
last film we're going to talk about,
Well, it's not the last.
well, no, individually.
Individually, I just want to make sure we clarify. We're not that done yet.
No, oh God, no, we are not done.
We went on an hour late, so we're hanging in the
Yeah,
as we can
yeah.
go.
So if you tuned in this much, you might as well just strap in, get you another glass of wine, and we're going. So the last one we're going to talk about individually is probably one of the least successful that Richard Donner directed. It's a film I actually missed in the theater. It's based on a novel by Michael Crichton, Jurassic Park, Michael Crichton, Andromeda Strain, Michael Crichton. You know, but it's a Michael Crichton book directed by Richard Donner. What could go wrong? Well, according to Goldar, a lot could go wrong. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Goldar as he talks about his choice, which was Timeline.
Timeline. Which oh my goodness, what could go wrong?
A lot, apparently.
There's a lot that could go wrong. So first, with book to movie adaptations, you know that sometimes they don't turn out quite the way that you want. And some examples of that is Battlefield Earth.
Oh my God!
My Sister's Keeper.
Yeah.
There are multiple movies that just come out that were just not good. And some fun facts about this is that Michael Crichton actually wanted to give away the rights for this movie for free.
Really?
To have it done in the what's the word for that? In the
The event?
In the event that they actually shoot the movie right away.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they shot the movie right away, and ironically, he fucking hated this movie.
Oh.
He hated this movie when it was done. And he hated it so bad that he did not want his name associated with this movie.
Really?
After it was done. Yeah, it was that terrible that it turned out. And ironically, the reviews that I saw for this for Timeline for the book were that the book was pretty decent and people enjoyed it, but the movie was not that. And there are a few differences here and there between the movie and the book, but the big kind of things that are kind of hard to take down with the movie as you're watching it is that, you know, the two prevailing theories with time travel is that there's the grandfather theory, which you've seen in Back to the Future. If you go back in time and you mess with time, you may not exist in the future. Or if you go with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Endgame, Loki, where there's the branch timeline theory, where you go back and you change something, there's a new branch timeline. With this, it kind of does the grandfather thing, but kind of doesn't. So they basically go back and they do all kinds of shit that just should have really fucked up the time. so they go back in time, which they call faxing, by the way. Like basically you're faxing data back.
Explain faxing what?
So basically they say that the time machine that they created was basically they were trying to create like a teleportation device, and they were trying to fax information to another location, but ended up latching onto a wormhole and sending things back to 1347 France, which I was like, faxing. That's kind of an interesting.
The wrong number?
Yeah. I'm like, did they get the wrong number of fax? Did they dial 1 before they like try to send the data?
They hit the France area code first.
Yeah,
you know, they were like, oh man, I should hit the US 1937 or 1837.
Does it make that noise?
Yeah. Did it send you some paperwork back that said it was successful? Like, so they were using faxing, which I thought was an interesting description that you were using for time travel and teleportation, but they use that to partially describe time travel, but also the effects of time travel. So if you travel back in time, it actually stitches you back together in such a way that shifts all of your physiology in a direction to where things aren't lined up correctly. So your veins, your arteries, and things like that are slightly shifted, your spine, all of that. So if you do too much time travel, you actually will
need an adjustment.
You need an adjustment. You need to see your time.
You need to go see Cameron Maynard at Maynard Family Chiropractic.
Exactly. So if you do too much time travel, you actually can't do any more time travel. So that was actually an integral part of the plot because essentially,
unless your family, right? Since Paul Walker's in there and stuff like that.
That's right. Yeah. If you could
time travel as long as you're part of the family.
Dude, I'm bald. I can say that.
So with that, the film actually had a really great cast. They had Paul Walker. They had Gerard Butler in one of his early roles. He was almost unrecognizable. He was so skinny and long hair. They had David Toulis, who, if you've seen recent movies, he was Ares in Wonder Woman. They had what's his name? I can't quite remember who he was. It's the doctor in this movie. I have to actually pull IMDb for this.
It's okay.
What's his name? Let me actually pull it here. Billy Connolly.
Billy Connolly?
Billy Connolly was the scientist. Classic. Yes. He was the scientist that initially went back in time. And what happened was he ended up getting trapped back in time. And he went back in time with Neil McDonough, who Michael McDonough.
I'm gonna get killed. Yes.
Neil McDonough, who plays the typical blue-eyed, mustache-twirling villain in like a bunch of B-level movies. anyway, Billy Connolly gets trapped back in time, and his son Paul Walker has to basically go back and rescue him. And basically, what they find is that they find a piece of his glasses in a chamber where they find some of his handwriting that says, please help. They're like, wait, this is 600 years ago. How did this happen? So they end up going to this company that Donald Toulis works for that basically says, hey, we discovered teleportation, faxing back in time, and we locked on to 1347, which, by the way, is kind of random that they only locked on to one time frame to go back in time, and one location, too, France.
Yes.
Of all things, to go back in time.
The French are awesome.
Right? So, but the book timeline doesn't designate that they're only locked to one time and one place, which is the difference there. So that's kind of the weird part with that. So
I mean, how did they get back? I mean,
so they
rescind themselves? I mean,
so they had these little devices that they had around their necks that were called markers that they would press to basically send them back through time. But some of them were actually destroyed whenever they went through.
Of course.
And so the weird part of this movie is that when they finally go back in time and try to rescue Billy Connolly, some of their devices are destroyed. They can't use them. One of the security guys that goes back with them, that's in charge of like really helping them to make sure that they're all safe and everything like that. What ends up happening is he first gets sent back in time, right? But before they go through the portal, they all tell them that you can't take anything with you through this timeline because it might destroy the timeline. We don't know if it's grandfather or branch timeline.
Right.
Fair enough. They take the French guy, the French guy that can actually translate the French language for them. They take his glasses, right? They say, you can't take your glasses back because this might affect the timeline.
Okay.
One of these security guys takes a fucking grenade back in time. He takes a grenade with him.
Oh my God.
Right? Gets shot with arrows, right? Right before he gets shot with these arrows, he pulls out this grenade, pulls the pin, gets shot with the arrows, then hits his marker, goes back in time, and then shows up in the time travel room and then blows it all up.
Oh my gosh.
So none of them can go back in time.
Oh my God.
And it's like, who told this guy it was okay to take a grenade?
So that's where the holy hand grenade came from.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
That's what.
Wonder Midge has explained it.
So it was like
a save from the Wonder Midge.
So it was like, oh wow. So he did not get the memo when they were just saying, don't take any glasses, don't take anything with you. But he took a grenade.
Glasses are not okay, but a grenade is.
Yeah. Because he was like, well, fuck you guys, I'm taking a grenade. I'm just gonna put this under I'm gonna put this under my my friar coat.
How many role-playing games have we all played? Like, hey, you can't take that.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I want a phase one tucked underneath my anal cavity, and I know this is a technically backwards civilization, but yeah, I'm taking that.
Exactly.
I really like this concept too, Eldar, because they're taking the fax, like you said, the fax technology, and they're mixing it with this Willy Wonka version, and sending them back to the 1400s.
The shot brought some Oompa Loompas out for that one.
It was kind of ridiculous. So
and this is one of the few Paul Walker movies where that's not Fast and Furious.
Right, and in fact, this movie came out after Fast and Furious 2, or Too Fast, Too Furious. So like kind of another.
He wasn't in that one, was he?
No, he was. Paul Walker was in
Right.
Too Fast, Too
I'm
Furious.
Tokyo Drift. Sorry.
Yeah. So another kind of fun fact about this movie is it was supposed to come out in fall 2002. But Paramount was not happy with the original cut of this movie. So what they ended up doing was rescheduling it for fall 2003 March 2003.
Right.
And they were not happy with the recut of this movie either.
Really?
So then they had to go back and cut this movie a third time. They had to recut it again. And they were finally okay with the cut, but they were still not terribly pleased with it. And they actually had to change the score for the music for the movie multiple times before it was actually officially released.
So how much money did they wind up spending on this
thing? So I didn't see how much money that they spent on this, but I can imagine that it was quite a bit.
This movie was a bomb.
Yes, it was still not good. And here's the craziest part. You would think like, okay, when they're traveling through time, they would actually have some kind of special effects. That was kind of interesting to show.
Sure.
For them to travel back in time, they stood in a room with two-way mirrors, and then there was a bright flash in everybody's face, and they were all screaming. So they were all like screaming like this when they were traveling through time. And I was like, even Back to the Future did something in 1985 to show somebody going back through time that was more interesting than this. So they really could have done something better.
Well, it's like in the trailer, there seems to be the scenes where they're going back in time, and it's like the mirrors, like they're standing there in normal clothes, and the mirrors come in front of them, and then their clothes change to where they're about to travel. Then there's like this all.
Yep, exactly.
Like, what the hell's going on there? I mean, it looked pretty damn enticing in a trailer, but I guess when you see it in the movie, it's like, this is some horse shit.
No, it is not hitting. It is not hitting. So, and then the last thing that's like really kind of crazy about this movie is they're going to technically 14th century France.
Yeah.
And they're all speaking modern day English and modern day French through this whole movie. So it's like, how are they communicating with all of these people back then? Because that's not correct at all.
I'm sure that that's probably sounding like jive.
Stewardess, I speak jive.
Wow. Wow, that was a good one.
That was a good pull on that one. For whatever reason to set me up, I dug it in. Yeah, that's all it is. But
That's a good one.
yeah. Wow.
So what I'm hearing is that you're not a real fan of this movie.
This was
the movie you picked, by the way.
This was a movie I picked. And
You
here's
were assigned this movie. You picked this movie.
And here's the thing, I picked this movie because it was one of the last movies that Richard Donner directed, like big budget movies.
It made 19.5 million was what it netted. It only made 20 million.
Oh my God.
So everything you were saying before,
Twice that.
Yeah.
And that's where Bill Shatner had made that comment one time when he was on panel, was editing can make or break a movie.
I mean, we're talking a Richard Donner film here. How can you go wrong?
Yeah.
You got Paul Walker, you got Billy Connolly, and how can you go wrong? Well, they
Gerard
edited
Butler,
it three times.
You got to remember, Gerard Butler was also in Phantom of the Menace, which not Phantom, the Phantom of the Opera.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's what I said. I'm setting booty traps.
Booty traps. Booty traps. Yeah.
Phantom of the Menace and Phantom of the Opera, two totally different movies.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's what I said. But so he wasn't an unknown, but I mean he's still a big draw. So you figure the pay for Billy Connolly, Gerard Butler, Paul Walker coming off of the two Fast and Furious. I mean, we're saying elevate 20 million. I think that was probably about their three salary budgets right there already done. And so it's like crazy.
So here's another fun fact that a lot of people don't know is that the DVD extras show a person before they made their debut pro wrestling career.
Oh.
Mr. Can't See Me, John Cena himself. Is in this movie.
No.
Man.
Yes, he is.
Holy shit! Wow.
Yes. So I am probably going to go back and watch the movie again to see if I can find John Cena in the background. So
Wow.
No wonder you can't see John Cena.
that's right.
Wow.
Wow.
So of all the time
See,
travel,
folks, this is why we need Comic-Con in person. Oh shit, we're as fun as we are now, we're way better in person.
Especially when they can interact with us.
Yes.
But as you were saying, Terry,
Go on.
And I can blame someone else from the tech problem. So I can blame someone else from the tech problem.
so of all the time travel movies, this is probably not the best one to watch. But it does have some entertaining moments here and there. The final battle scene is actually pretty entertaining, considering that it actually truly didn't exist. The whole situation of Castlegar, France, where it takes place, where the English destroy this French village, it doesn't take place at all. It doesn't even take place in the Michael Crichton book itself. It's totally made up. But it is a fun scene to watch. So I would say it's kind of fun to give a like a walkthrough one time, but
how long is it?
It's you know what? Honestly, it was a little bit longer than I expected. Yeah, I think it was about an hour and 49 or hour 50 minutes.
Okay,
that's okay. I can handle.
So it's not a 2-hour movie, but it's got a little bit of length to it.
Right.
So one other like kind of fun fact that I wanted to kind of add to this, based on our discussion of Richard Donner, through this whole thing, he was actually one of the 4 directors that actually bid to try to direct Jurassic Park. Before they actually settled on Steven Spielberg. So
I heard that.
And just based on our conversation about the Goonies just a bit ago, where Richard Donner and Steven Spielberg had a working relationship.
Yep.
Richard Donner and Steven Spielberg and Michael Crichton had a relationship as well. They were close friends,
Mm-hmm.
so the 3 of them kind of collaborated.
So what does a Richard Donner Jurassic Park look like?
I was just thinking that. How phenomenal could that have been?
But not that Spielberg's any slouch. I mean, my God, Steven Spielberg. But you think it would have been a little less?
I bet they would have left the island.
What?
That I bet they would have left the island
Well,
at the beginning.
Sigourney Weaver had been in, and I'm sure Ripley would have said, "Let's go."
Close
that hatch. Don't let him in.
Especially in the 3rd one.
Yeah.
3rd Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah.
You're asking my park.
So I mean, we brought up a lot of great points and stuff, but I guess even with timeline, it just shows the true like sheer like breadth of Richard Donner's career. I mean, you can't have such a stellar career and not have some ones that just don't really pay off.
Yeah.
But that almost kind of highlights the career that you have on the great moments. And stuff.
Yeah.
You got to have the ups and the downs, or you're just you don't have that life. You don't have that experience and such. So, in my personal opinion.
No, I agree, and I think that we need to close on his.
Well, do we have any comments before we go into our closing?
Well, I mean, I was just going to piggyback on what you said. I mean, every one of us, like, going into making a decision in life, you have a vision of how it's going to turn out.
Yes. Yep.
Once you introduce other people into it, shit could go wrong. So, I mean, the fact that he's covered so many different genres and made so many things that connect with different audiences.
Yes.
I think that's like, we give honor to him for like, he touched the Goonies for fangirls, but it's like The Omen, and we're gonna come up on Lethal Weapon and Twilight. Like, okay, so I mean, yeah, Jared pointed out, suck one, it's fine. Sounds like he sucked with style.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
That's what you gotta do. Suck with style.
Yes,
And
every T-shirt with that. Suck with style.
That's the phrase of the day.
Yes.
But I love all the little things that he did before that.
Yeah.
I mean, and he gave us so much, even in television. The little things like, he directed several episodes of all kinds of different things. He was never the main, right?
Yeah.
So Gilligan's Island, what was it, the Banana Splits? So for any of you 70s.
Oh my God, yes, the Banana Splits.
So for you 70s children and you 80s kids and even you 90s kids, on the retro rewind, the Banana Splits, crazy goofy stuff like that. I
You
mean,
were high AF if you
the parents were, we weren't,
I know, we were like, what the hell? This is great.
It's like, I just want a donut and watch the Banana Splits.
Yeah.
And then go outside and play.
Danger Island. Yeah. Oh
Well,
my God.
I do have to say though, just being a big fan of all that, Gilligan's Island was one of my biggest shows that I loved, and just finding out that he was one of the directors on many of the episodes, that warmed my heart. So, but I was today years old when I found that out. I knew about mentioned the Banana Splits, but it's crazy how his art has just touched everywhere. He's established franchises.
Yeah.
And which we now have that term. There were no movie franchises.
Right.
I don't think until about the late 70s and then into the 80s. But then to establish that pole and canon for all of those genres kind of going forward. So thank you, Mr. Donner, for everything.
Well, but I think that like you look at what he's done, and I feel like he's been like a quiet director.
Yeah,
Like, he's not like a big he's
the
not like
silence,
big budget
yeah.
like he's
He's
not
not George
flashy.
Lucas. He's not.
He mentored everybody that he worked with. And
But when you look back at his like playbook of work, like it's amazing. Like he's done all these different things that have touched people in so many different ways. He's engaged with the audience, the actors, other directors and producers. Like he's established like relationships and like created all of these moments for all of us to connect with.
Well, and he has like this ability to touch more than one generation. Because like, and a lot of people don't realize this, but he was also the director for all of the Free Willy movies. So like,
that's right.
So he did all of those, and those were like the movies that I like to watch. Granted, now I've seen Blackfish, I realize that that's not probably the best thing to like, but like he did all four of the three Free Willy movies, because there were four of them. Granted, you only talk about the first two because the last two were kind of bad. But like the first one, I mean, I remember watching that, and I think that's what made
all
me
the time.
And I loved Wales, and I always
Mama, I watch Free Willy. Mama,
yeah,
I don't want Disney sing-alongs. I want Free Willy.
Yeah, like
or Star Trek 4, either one.
Yeah,
either one. Yeah, and of Star Trek, of the Star Trek movies, Star Trek 4 is probably one of my favorite movies.
Right there.
So like right there with the whale thing, but I really like whales. So but he can touch more than just one generation. He's not about these 80s kids. He knew what the 90s kids liked too. He knew how to connect to adults and children in the same movie.
Yeah, that's a good
So like
point.
that's the difference. Like a lot of people like, oh, it's a kids movie and they're gonna throw in a couple of adult jokes that just kind of go right over your head. Or it's just an adult movie. There's a lot of directors that they don't know the difference to like connect, and I think he did. So.
All right.
Need one? Well, so I was trying to respond to some things that were popping up on the live feed, but that's okay. But so here it is. We've talked about Donner's career, and I think it's important that we close out with probably the most important thing that he ever did.
Well, I don't want to say the most important thing.
Superman. Well, okay, so Superman was amazing.
It was, but I mean, he's done so many great things for, and you know, really, I guess the important thing is he created this artwork that touches everybody in every way. Because we can't say everybody loves Superman. Everyone loves Goonies. Everyone loves what we're about to discuss.
Right.
Well, I know one person downstairs that doesn't love Goonies.
Well, he's wrong.
Why?
That's okay.
We haven't shown him the error of his ways.
Because he took on another script and another directing job as he was, you know, in conflict with the Salkins and other things that became a franchise in and of itself, and that is Lethal Weapon. Richard Donner directed all 4 Lethal Weapon films, and these films were amazing. They reinvigorated the buddy cop franchise, as far as I'm concerned. And in my opinion, there would be no Bad Boys without Lethal Weapon.
Right.
There would be there's a lot of things. There would be nothing without Lethal Weapon.
I mean, so
there would be no Die Hard. There would be nothing.
What about where was Miami Vice in the Lethal Weapon?
It was in that same period. So it was kind of concurrent with that.
What about Beverly Hills Cop?
Beverly Hills Cop was prior to this.
Oh, okay.
So Beverly Hills Cop, and I want to say maybe Beverly Hills Cop 2 fell between Lethal Weapon 2, but this franchise was a pinnacle part of his career, and it's probably what he'll be remembered for. So
I'd agree. I mean, Lethal Weapon. You're right. It had so many moments in the movie that felt like other movies and it didn't feel like they were copying.
Right.
I mean, like the whole Christmas moment, in the beginning and stuff. But to me, it always kind of has a Die Hard feel to it.
Well, my thing was, I've always loved movies that latch onto the season.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we're gonna make this movie take place during Christmas, or
because Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Right.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
So,
it is.
but yeah. So
The
like
great debate, people. The great debate.
The great debate. And
The
that'll
Queen
be
and
a-
Goldar thing.
That'll be a Fanboys918 podcast later.
In December.
Yes.
Oh, that should be a great one.
Yes!
In December.
December,
What
we're
is
on
and
December.
is not a Christmas movie.
Because Lethal Weapon is a Christmas movie.
Heck yeah,
Yes,
it is.
it is.
And
But,
Die Hard.
but so I've loved movies that take place that embrace the season they're in or whatever. And man, Lethal Weapon, I didn't see this coming. Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, whatever. And I saw it like, oh my God, this movie is amazing. It was one of the greatest action films of that year.
And you're Danny Glover. I mean, man, just hands down.
Oh yeah,
Because you're getting too old for this shit.
I am getting too old for this shit. And then we have
She's
Lethal
been
Weapon.
too old for this shit for a long time.
So I'm gonna say
Man.
this right now. So here's my thoughts. Lethal Weapon 2 of the 4 films that were in the franchise, Lethal Weapon 2 is my favorite.
Why?
Because it takes everything from Lethal Weapon, which by the way was Shane Black's the screenwriter who, Hollywood was going through a writer strike at the time. So it was Shane Black's script. They took it, they made it as was. Basically this is it.
Mm-hmm.
My thing was Lethal Weapon 2 is Richard Donner and Shane Black's meld of what this franchise should look like. I know Shane Black was unhappy with some of the humor elements brought into it, but to me, this was great. This was, Weapon 3 kind of went very comedy. Lethal Weapon 4 went very comedic.
Yeah.
But to me, Lethal Weapon 2 is the greatest franchise sequel ever because at the end you think, oh wow, Martin Riggs is going to die.
Yeah.
This is the end for Martin Riggs, but quite. But
So let's go over here to the Blues Man and Wonder Man, Lethal Weapon franchise. What's your favorite?
So I gotta agree with Geek Boy on that and add Lethal Weapon 2 to that possible list of sequels that did better.
Yes!
Did better than the original. But you have to give props though. You can't have the sequel without the original. So there is that. But I really like how they took the comedy of kind of a little Dragnet, threw in a little Dirty Harry with it, and I think it was a great combination.
I loved it. I still think the first one is my favorite.
Oh, really?
Although
Okay.
the second one, I will agree, is a more superior film.
Really? Okay, so how do you mean your first one's the favorite, but the second one's superior?
Just the first one is just the dynamics. Two brand new unknown characters.
Yeah.
You're meeting for the first time, and just that chemistry and just that level.
You get all the character development,
All the character stuff.
which you and I really
I
helps
dig
with
all
the
that.
believability.
Say it now.
Say the word.
Say the word.
Verisimilitude.
There you
He's the
go.
only one that can
Wow.
say it tonight, people.
Verisimilitude.
Yeah,
That's
that's,
right.
word.
impressive right there. But yeah, the Lethal Weapon 2 is absolutely, hands down, a far superior movie to the first, but the first is my favorite.
Awesome. All right, let's go to the Fangirls. Fangirls, Lethal Weapon franchise, if you have input, what is your favorite?
I can't remember a favorite. I just remember that my mom loves these movies. So that's why I was watching them at the time. Because the first one was, I think I just looked on IMDb, 87.
Yes.
So I was 9. I mean, they were in my
Wheelhouse?
wheelhouse. I was still watching
They were-
Goonies.
Boy, that makes
Watching
me
Goonies, Clueless,
But I actually loved the movies because I think the relationship between the two characters is what you latch onto. Like they are different but the same, and they just play off of each other regardless of the situations you're put in. Like you can tell that they care about each other, and like they're just hilarious. So which one is the toilet? Where's the toilet blow up? Is that the first
second one.
Second
one.
Second
Okay, so I might lean towards the second one then. 'Cause I-
Lethal Weapon 2. That's the bomb right there.
But you can't have Lethal Weapon 2 without Lethal Weapon 1.
It's like The Godfather.
Oh my God! Here we go.
that is definitely a different
Yeah.
podcast.
So, Lethal Weapon is ultimately, it's setting up, because we see the kids, we see Danny Glover's kids, we see his wife, we introduced Martin Riggs, who is this crazy Vietnam vet that has just got a death wish because his wife is dead, and he has nowhere to go. He has, I mean, it speaks to where, what would we do if we lost the love of our lives, basically. Mm-hmm. And so we bring him in, and it's the whole Danny Glover. I'm too old for this shit. He's learning. He's ready to retire, but he can't because he has 4 young children, and he's got this boat. He's got this big house.
He's building an extra room.
He's building an extra room. So he can't.
Which sinks in Lethal Weapon 4.
Yes, it does sink. But and it shows that we are really that whole buddy cop of the Dragon.
If I could say, it's about family. Okay.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. You can't make a franchise without family.
Oh my God. Jeez Louise.
Oh my God. Sorry, I didn't mean to break the rhythm.
No, you're fine.
Oh my God.
So, in Mr. Joshua, I mean, give him props.
Gary Busey.
Gary Busey.
918.
I mean, granted, he is a 918er.
He is a 918.
He is a.
Yes, he is.
He was not only a Hell Ranger, but he was also Roger's
Right. Yeah.
Busey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I mean, so he was original 918er.
He was.
Rogers graduate.
No,
Crazy.
he wasn't a Rogers graduate. He was a Hell graduate. The only reason I know that is my mom he graduated the year before my mother, so he actually went to some Hell reunions when my mother was still alive.
Oh wow.
Okay.
And I saw Gary Busey.
Did you say he went to
He's a jerk.
As an underclassman, he was Rogers.
He was Rogers. Okay. So, he's embedded in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense about Gary Busey.
That's what she said, setting booty traps.
Booby traps.
Every circle wait. Richard Donner's a movie god.
No, sorry, she's setting Busey traps.
Busey traps.
That explains a lot about him, though.
Yeah, but okay, Jess. He was in a motorcycle wreck, so, he's not all there.
That almost got scrambled for sure.
Yeah. So, we tying back to the Tulsa part of it, but, he just, and it brought in that Vietnam part of, we have tend to forget Vietnam. We tend to just keep, that happened, but we don't think of it, because it's always been part of our lives. And, we're more accepting to the Vietnam now than we were back in the 80s. 70s and 80s.
I'd say we're more appreciative of our vets now
than we were back then.
And we've got a lot of vets in this room, so of course we're always going to throw that out there.
Yes.
Right.
We got many vets that are serving, and we've active military. So we, that is one thing that. So Lethal Weapon 1 for me probably was the start of it. And like I said, Bad Boy, like Don, I'm going to back off of what the IT Geek said. Or no, Geek Boy.
Geek Boy. Wow.
Yeah.
How about the one you sleep with?
Okay, there we go.
Which one is that? I couldn't leave that one alone.
The fact that I said it at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then he's
It's
predictable.
more hiding, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Rizzo.
Hell yeah.
Rizzo, yeah.
Right.
So, we wouldn't have gotten Bad Boys because Bad Boys was, Lethal Weapon was the template for Bad Boys. And, we couldn't have gotten that awesome franchise as well, thanks to Richard Donner.
Right.
Basically.
Brunch, what do you got?
Well, okay, so I think I can piggyback off of what Queen said in the fact that my parents consider this movie a Christmas movie. So that's when we would watch it. And so you had to watch that one before we could watch Christmas Story, so you had to be there, or you didn't get to watch anything else. So
that's
Yes.
And it's not Christmas.
I will say it's not in our
Short.
rotation.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be now.
Yeah, probably.
Look at it.
But-
Like, we don't own it though.
Oh, we got plenty of other streaming media.
So I don't remember. I remember like Danny Glover's like family, and I think that I latched on more so to Danny Glover because Angels in the Outfield. So I would connect those two together because that was one of
We
my.
got 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
I mean, truthfully.
So like that's where I like. So I would always like focus on them. I never really. I saw. I don't know his name. The other one, the one that you were just talking about, Vietnam vet.
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson. Oh, yeah, that makes more sense. But yeah, Mel Gibson. So like for me,
There's a lot of booze involved.
Yeah.
That's how we can keep it going for 2 hours.
So we got started late, and the booze is already flowing.
Yeah.
Pre-start time, the original start.
Sure. Yeah.
But like he never clicked for me.
Exactly.
Like that one never, like Mel Gibson in that movie never clicked for me. I was like, oh, he's just a crazy guy whose wife died. Like, and as a child, you're like, just get over it. Like, you can't really be that way. But like, as like a 12-year-old, you're like, I don't care. Like,
She's got a point. I mean, as a 12-year-old, you're like, big deal. You know?
I want to watch Christmas Story and get it over with. Like,
I'm gonna
I've
jump
never
back.
watched Die Hard already.
I want to jump back over Wonder Bit. She made a great moment here, statement here. So this wouldn't be. What'd you say about Richard Donner? And this wouldn't be a proper.
Wait.
Oh yeah, I mean, if we weren't, imbibing in good spirits, this would not be a proper wake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm
So-
down.
Exactly. I think we'll go there. Everyone drinks up.
Yes.
Before
Don't have
we
any.
get this wrapped up. So we'll come back to
Yeah.
Richard Donner.
Richard Donner.
Keep your drinks up until I get through all the scenes.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, everybody.
There we go.
Superman.
Richard Donner.
Cheers.
Cheers,
Richard Donner.
everybody.
Hell yeah.
Thank you, Richard, for everything.
Mhm.
Yes.
Agreed. So I mean, coming back to us, I think we'll kind of start to wind things down. But go to Lethal Weapon series. What's your favorite?
Man, I would probably say number 4 is my favorite because I went to the movie theater to see it, and I always loved Chris Rock.
Yeah.
I just watched Chris Rock in Spiral, which, if you don't know, Spiral is basically a continuation of the Saw series, which is pretty brutal and kind of gross.
Oh.
But it is hilarious because Chris Rock has all the quips for this movie. So watching people get ground to little bits and bloody bits, it's hilarious because he has the jokes.
Yeah.
So I love anything Chris Rock is in. So Lethal Weapon 4 was my favorite.
What was the name of this movie?
Spiral.
Spiral.
Uh-oh.
And so I
just added that to his list.
So,
Yes.
and I'll give mine. So I'm kind of with the blues band. So basically, Lethal Weapon 1 will always be my favorite. I agree. 2 is probably a superior film just because it's just even better acting, better writing, and all that stuff. But we wouldn't have this franchise without the first one. And I mean, there's certain elements about 1 that really stand out with me. Like the very first one that pops out is like, there's a scene where he's kind of had dinner with Mel Gibson's character's had dinner with Danny Glover, and he's like, he's standing over his truck and he's talking about like sniping people and stuff like that. And he's like, only like 1 in 10 people could probably make that. And then, all
It's the only thing I was ever good at.
Yeah. And he's like, and I found that was the only thing I was good at. And I mean, it's just like, wow. I mean, what a moment. And
That's a very personal.
it is.
Yes,
It's very personal. And in my personal experience, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but when you get someone with a military background that's probably had some incidences like that in their tours, it's very hard for them to open up about those type of moments. And they don't open up until they know they're close with people.
Right.
And so that I know I saw that before I had a military career, but in retrospect, now having that experience and being able to share personal elements of my serving and everything like that, that has endeared me even more to that movie. So it's those type of scenes like that are more powerful, more impactful. So that's why I go back to Lethal Weapon 1 as my favorite.
All right, perfect.
And I agree with that. Although
I really did like Lethal Weapon 2, mainly because you got more character development. But you definitely got in depth. It was a little bit, I almost want to say darker, just because you are getting into the psyche and everything that he's going through. But that shows the trust that he earned with Glover's character. And it brought him out of that, having that family and having something else, you know, like you said, that was the only thing he was ever good at. So he just thought of himself as a killer, and that's not what it was. He was good at so many other things, and to see him come out of that funk in the second one, and that was solidified for me with the whole exploding toilet scene. I know that's one of those really weird movie scenes, but they did it so well. It was written well enough that you're talking about, this is intense, and you could die any second.
On a toilet.
On the toilet. I mean, holy.
That's the worst place to die.
Worst place to die.
Pants around your ankles, you're
Yeah.
completely embarrassed. Now your whole house is filled with everybody that's not supposed to be there.
Right.
You know,
But-
And you know, if you survive this, you're gonna get rasped so hard when you
But
go back to work.
to know that, you know, and I think everyone in this room, I mean, like, I think we're all close enough that if we were in that dire of a circumstance, no one would leave the room without
Yeah.
being
Oh,
there. I mean,
absolutely.
there's no one
Yeah.
would let us die on the toilet by
Be a
ourselves.
lot of embarrassment this
A lot of
room. Like,
embarrassment.
couldn't
Oh,
you
yeah.
get out? I don't need
Dude.
all 10 of you in here. I want dinner.
Then we take turns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the scene in Jurassic Park when like the T-Rex comes down on that dude and he's like, "Rah!" and he's on the toilet. I'm like, oh, that's the worst place to get eaten by a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Can you
So, yeah.
imagine getting to heaven? How did you die? Well,
We're not going to talk about it.
Well, you know, and I do want
We got
to
our own
point this out
video.
that the nice little hat tip of Glover coming in Maverick. When Glover's robbing the bank and Maverick goes in and sees his buddy that's running the bank.
I mean, and those characters in Maverick don't know each other, but the fact that they just connect eyes, and it's like, do I know you? And then they don't go any further.
Yeah.
that was just
That scene was
but
perfect.
that's that fan pandering.
And that's that chemistry between Glover that those two, Gibson.
Yeah.
But the chemistry between all of them, that they did the same thing with Garner and
I
Margot
totally
Kidder.
forgot about that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that scene. That's funny.
That's one of the best scenes
Yeah.
because at that time everybody knew Lethal Weapon. This was after the third they'd already done 3 Lethal Weapons,
Yeah.
so they hadn't done number 4 yet. But a lot of the older fans knew about James Garner and Margot Kidder in their thing together. So
Again, gemstones.
those Easter eggs, and it's all pandering. You pander away. Throw all that fandom in there for me. I'll eat it up.
Well, guys, I think we have done a fantastic job of making a tribute to Richard Donner. There's a lot of things that he did behind the scenes, like from a producer, he produced the X-Men, the first modern comic book movie, right? But besides Superman. He produced that movie that created the template for everything that's come before. He produced X-Men, he produced X-Men First Class. And I think that we need to basically close out with a tribute to him as we could.
So online, I found a video. It wasn't created by us, so I want to make sure we give props.
Yes.
To it, but it's a tribute to Richard Donner and in the career he is so graciously given us.
Yes.
Throughout his lifetime. So again, from the Fanboys918 and to the person that created this tribute, this is a Richard Donner tribute. We'll close out with this being our exit. So we appreciate everyone joining in today, especially all the Fanboys918 family.
Yes, it was amazing. Everybody in the same place. So
It's all about the family.
It's all about the family.
all about the family.
So with that, here's a Richard Donner tribute.
Dick has a talent because of the things that are in him as a person. He wants to believe in those myths. And when you can make an audience believe that what's happening on the screen, even though it's totally extraordinary, that this is actually happening, that's when you have verisimilitude.
I have a sign to this day in my office of Superman flying through the air and dragging a sign by him that says verisimilitude. Because the story had to have its own honesty. Everybody had to believe it was real.
Oh, what do you want to hear, man?
There it
Do
is.
you want to hear that sometimes I think about eating a bullet? Well, I do.
Honestly, yeah, see it. Okay.
You're
catching it while it slumbers in the womb.
In God's name are you talking about?
The son of the devil.
The films Dick made inspired me to want to go down that track. And of course, in particular, Superman the movie is still to this day the archetype of the perfect superhero film origin story. And we watch it before we make almost any one of our films.
I want to do for Batman what Dick Donner did for Superman back in 1978.
He's
As a
wearing
kid.
good taste.
Well, perfect.
When I worked for Dick, he said, I have to save Superman. And he made the greatest superhero film still ever.
Dick Donner is the biggest kid on the block, and his sense of playfulness really is what gave the movie its magic.
That'll be the day when a guy can fly, huh?